But as oceans continue to warm and sea levels rise, it's also the island nation's greatest threat. Will mining its ocean floor transform its future or ruin it? There's no easy answer yet. Thank you for listening to this episode of Assignment from the BBC World Service. I'm Katie Watson, and my producer was Lyndall Markwell.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Mercy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. Welcome to the morning show on CBC. Thursday, frigid out there. Abby just whispered in my ear that it's minus 26. And we've got another day with an extreme cold morning for Winnipeg and most of southern Manitoba, southeastern Manitoba, and even up into Swan River and Minnedosa. So it's going to be cold. Cover up, bundle up, and get into the day. We're on air till 8:37. If you have any issues in traffic, 788-3093. But regular winter driving is what we're going to get today. Our high in Winnipeg today is minus 25, but with wind chill, as I've alluded to, it's going to feel like minus 41 on exposed skin. And yes, it's going to be sunny and clear. So that blue sky is the payoff for these cold days, right? Let's say good morning to the team. Good morning to Corey Funk. Corey directs the program and also will be on air covering the commute as well. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls of the show, and Abby covers weather on the program. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who's here also, who's behind the controls of YouTube if you're watching the show today. Heather Wells is in, as always, with our headlines. Let's get started at 2 minutes to 6 with talking to her. Hi, Heather.
Good morning, yes. Well, the average homeowner in Winnipeg is going to pay $120 more in property taxes next year. People with houses assessed higher than $371,000 will pay even more as the city jacks up taxes by almost 6%. Mayor Scott Gillingham says it was a really difficult decision. And First Nation leaders are calling for an immediate resolution to the ongoing Canada Post strike. The Crown Corporation is the only courier that flies in parcels to a number of isolated communities in northern Manitoba. Those stories and more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, in addition to the stories we'll have on the show today because of our newscasts and Heather being with us through the morning, we also are going to be having some interviews about some other subjects. So in the first hour of the show, we're going to talk about this meeting that happened between the Prime Minister of Canada and the premiers, and they were talking about what to do in reaction to the 25% proposed tariffs on this country because of President-elect Trump. So we'll get some analysis of what was said there. You're about to hear a bit on World Report, and then we'll have a full interview. In addition, looking back to local matters, coming up after 7 o'clock, a local woman says she's stuck between two devastating choices, keeping her infected leg and taking antibiotics forever. So we're going to hear more about what happened there to her.
Today on Q with Tom Power. Snotty-nosed res kids think that thinking of Indigenous people existing in the future at all is a radical act. That's the idea behind their new record, Red Future. They'll be here to introduce you to the album and tell you why it's important, even when you're making a political record, to be silly. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is preparing to take action on the border, and now that he has briefed the country's premiers on his plans, their talking points are getting a little tougher. Team Canada had a virtual meeting about Donald Trump's tariff threat last night, and Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with details. Janice, we have heard a lot of words from our political leaders. When does the action happen?
Marcia, we were already expecting Monday's fall economic statement to include a $1 billion border package. The heads of the RCMP and the Border Services Agency are in front of a parliamentary committee this afternoon. So we'll see if they've got specifics about what that kind of money buys in terms of surveillance gear, infrastructure, or additional officers. But beyond this budget boost, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc also says there's a bill coming.
There is a moment where we can make increased investments in both the RCMP and CBSA. Some of it may require legislative authorities, but there are a number of exciting moments coming up in the next few days.
Conservatives have offered to help pass a border package, but would it include more than just new spending? Could it expand the jurisdiction of border officers so they can patrol the entire length of the border, not just the designated crossings, for example? Premiers have also asked Health Canada, as the drug regulator, to be more involved in the tracing and crack down on precursor chemicals for fentanyl. Quebec Premier François Legault also wants tighter visa rules. And Immigration Minister Mark Miller said yesterday his department needs to improve the integrity of its visa controls. He's also hinted at changes to the Safe Third Country Agreement. Will all this be enough for the Americans? Because, yes, the incoming Trump administration is using this tariff threat to get what it wants on border security, but it also wants the revenue it believes it can make off these big new tariffs.
So what else can Canada do to deter tariffs?
Ontario Premier Doug Ford suggested that Canada needs to be pushing on more economic pain points, leveraging its natural resources, even perhaps threatening the Americans' energy security.
But we'll use every tool in our toolbox, including cutting them off energy that we're sending down there.
Now, look, as with all retaliatory moves, there's a real risk of mutual self-harm if you're going to start talking about throttling the heavily integrated cross-border electricity grid, for example. For now, Chrystia Freeland is encouraging premiers not to focus on sector-specific threats or exemptions. Keep trying to exempt Canada as a whole, full stop, from these tariffs.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. You might say the mood in St. John's today is electric. A contentious power deal between Newfoundland, Labrador, and Quebec may soon be overhauled. As Terry Roberts tells us, we will get more details from both premiers this afternoon.
Quebec needs to show us the money.
Premier Andrew Furey's been spouting that line for months when asked about ongoing talks with Quebec to rewrite the lopsided Churchill Falls hydroelectric contract, an agreement that's been described as one of the worst energy deals in Canadian history.
About 90% of it will go to Quebec.
Then Premier Joey Smallwood in 1969 promoting the deal. This afternoon, Furey and Quebec Premier François Legault will announce what's being described as a historic partnership, an agreement in principle that will see Quebec continue to have access to massive quantities of Labrador electricity, but also funnel more money to Newfoundland and Labrador.
We have plays and operas written about this.
The current deal is a lingering wound in Newfoundland and Labrador, says political scientist Amanda Bittner. Multiple legal challenges against the contract have failed, and Quebec has refused to budge. Hydro-Quebec buys the power for 0.02 cents per kilowatt hour and sells it for as much as 40 times that amount on the market. It's a legacy of a 1969 deal that soured relations and caused a level of resentment that seeped into the cultural psyche of Newfoundland and Labrador, says Bittner.
So to have a really boring energy deal take up that much of our cultural sort of mindset and thinking and creativity is really interesting.
Legault admitted last year the original Churchill Falls agreement is a bad deal. How far is he willing to go to remedy that injustice? We'll find out this afternoon. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
The White House is calling it the largest single-day grant of clemency in modern history. U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to pardon 39 people today. All were convicted of nonviolent crimes. Biden is also expected to commute the sentences of nearly 1,500 others. Those are people who were released from prison and put on home confinement at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden is still being criticized by some for pardoning his son Hunter, despite saying he wouldn't do that.
윤석열 대통령에 대한 2차
South Korea's opposition parties have filed a second impeachment motion against Yoon Suk-yeol. This is the latest backlash against the president for declaring martial law last week. Yoon survived a first impeachment vote last weekend. His party boycotted that vote. But there are indications some members will support this one. But Yoon says he will fight to the end.
지금껏 국정 마비와
In a televised address this morning, Yoon defended his decision to declare martial law. He described it as a legitimate part of governing. It's the time of year when cases of RSV start rising among young children. That makes this year different, and what makes it different is a new shot to protect infants against the respiratory illness. But as health reporter Mike Crawley tells us, 8 of the 10 provinces are not offering it to all newborns.
So you start by getting baby undressed for us, yes. Okay, please.
At this Toronto hospital, a nurse gets ready to immunize 4-month-old Neela against respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV.
I'm so sorry.
RSV typically causes cold-like symptoms, but can lead to serious lung infections, especially in infants. It sends several thousand Canadian children to hospital each year.
Babies born preterm are particularly susceptible.
Dr. Philip Sherbo is Chief of Pediatrics for Mackenzie Health, a hospital system in the Greater Toronto Area.
Those with more severe disease may have things like wheezing, some difficulty breathing. They may look distressed or incredibly tired.
Now there's a new shot against RSV. It's a monoclonal antibody, a specialized injection that provides immediate protection from disease. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization recently recommended it for all infants. However, only Ontario, Quebec, and the 3 territories are offering it universally. Elsewhere, only the highest-risk babies are eligible.
I really wish we could have it in our province.
Hannah Markham is mother of a 4-month-old in Halifax.
It's just to protect our babies, keep them safe, keep them healthy.
The other 8 provinces did not reach a pricing agreement with Sanofi, the company that makes the RSV shot. Its list price is more than $950 per dose. In a statement, Sanofi says it continues to work with all provinces and territories to facilitate access to the shot for all Canadian babies. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The Small Claims Court of Yukon has ordered Air Canada to pay $10,000 to a couple whose vacation was ruined. They'd saved up for 3 years for their first getaway without kids. But when they got to the airport in February 2023, their flight was overbooked. Over 3 days, they were sent to multiple Canadian airports. Each time they were promised a replacement flight, it never materialized. The justice hearing the case said Air Canada put the couple through a horrendous experience. Vancouver is now officially a Bitcoin-friendly city. City Council voted last night in favor of a motion by Mayor Ken Sim. As the CBC's Yvette Bren tells us, it came after some fierce debate.
And this motion allows us to explore whether Bitcoin can help us safeguard our financial resources.
A parade of colorful crypto advocates applaud Mayor Ken Sim's motion to explore integrating Bitcoin into the city's financial strategies.
Because the loonie is no longer competitive.
Some rapped.
They tried to shut down me and XRP, but it was all just fiat before me.
Some preached.
Bitcoin absolutely represents an opportunity to rescue humanity.
They touted Bitcoin as a way to solve everything from inflation to housing affordability. But critics warn it's not technically legal tender. Even in U.S. cities that allow it for tax payments like Detroit, it's converted to cash fast. Vancouver City Councillor Pete Fry voted no to Mayor Ken Sim's motion, noting money laundering problems in places that embrace it, like El Salvador and Switzerland.
Zug is known for tax evasion, Russian oligarchs. It's also the most expensive city to live in Switzerland.
Sim's motion to explore Bitcoin passed, and he assured council of its potential to solve even environmental issues.
Bitcoin has the opportunity to actually have so many positive impacts on the environment.
Despite dire warnings just days ago from top economists, including the former U.S. Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, who called talk of a U.S. government Bitcoin reserve crazy. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, this just in, Manitoba. It's cold. Yep. Enough said. It's extremely cold. We're going to talk about it through the morning. We've already had Brandon School Division saying no rural buses. That actually did just come into us here at CBC, so we'll elaborate in a moment. Bundle up and welcome to Thursday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio, your morning show. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, this hour, we are going to be talking about something to do with the cold and a need in our community. Some folks living with homelessness in Winnipeg need extra gloves, and they're short on finding gloves and mittens for communities. So we're going to talk more about how you might be able to help out. In addition, you just heard how the Prime Minister and provincial and territorial leaders talked about the new President-elect Trump and also these tariffs. So we're going to have a full interview that looks in more detail at that story. So stay tuned. Plus, speaking of things down south, we're kicking off the new year with the lowest loonie seen in 5 years. So that's going to make some items more expensive. It will increase, of course, international travel costs, not just to the States, but elsewhere. So we're going to hear about that as well. We've got our finance columnist on this hour with some analysis of the low loonie and what it means. Right now, let's get some analysis of news stories in Manitoba. Heather Wells is in with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba woman who waited years for knee surgery is now dealing with news she will likely lose her leg. Rose Milburn got an infection after the procedure in October. A surgeon started a procedure he wasn't able to finish, and Milburn now wants someone to be held accountable. We'll hear what happened. And a budget proposal to reduce the frequency of snow plowing on residential streets is getting an icy reception from some Winnipeggers. Justin Delacruz says he was disappointed to learn about the pilot project in the proposed budget. He says it's going to be bad news for drivers if the city waits until there's 15 centimeters of snow before clearing. Amanda Rose agrees, saying clearing residential streets keeps crashes and car insurance down. So we'll hear more reaction in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's take calls on that this morning. On the budget overall, but I think actually that's one of the budget lines that will have a lot of people talking. Clearing at 15 centimeters instead of at 10, as Heather was just outlining. What are your thoughts on that? 788-3205. Also, obviously, property taxes. We've already been analyzing that in the program this week, but what are your thoughts on that going up? What things in the budget, obviously, we ask frame the question the same way all the time. What's going to affect you and your family and your life here in Winnipeg? So have a look at the article at cbc.ca/Manitoba if you want to read more about the changes. The big ones, though, would be probably the property taxes, of course, and the snow clearing, as well as the transit fares going up. Also, I'll just mention, going up 10 cents on January 1st. So adult fares in Winnipeg for 2025 will now be $3.35. So many things in here might be affecting you, but we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. We'll have obviously more analysis today. But 788-3205. Right now, we're going to analyze the weather with Ali Adiyemi, who's sighing his way under the radio. Corey Funk's here too. Hi, Corey.
Hello.
Did you run in this?
I did. I bundled up like crazy, and I made it. Yeah, it was all right.
Are you warm yet?
Are you okay, Corey?
I'm okay. You know what? The key is, I say this, you bundle up and move. That is the key to surviving Winnipeg winters.
My feet are probably more cold from sitting in the car, quite honestly.
Yeah, seriously, that's the thing. I feel like I just wear normal, like, kind of runners. Like, they're waterproof, but I wear normal runners, and you just keep moving, and I don't get cold feet.
Bravo for you. And if everybody thought yesterday was cold, today is even colder.
Yes.
So what's up, Abby?
Yep, it's going to be another very cold day. Temperatures remain bitterly and dangerously cold across the province this morning. The risk of frostbite is still a big concern. We have that extreme cold warning in effect for southern Manitoba. That's frigid air mass. It's now settled in, and overnight temperatures, we saw it drop to minus 30 and even colder. But when you look at it combined to that westerly winds we got yesterday, it feels more like minus 40 and even colder. Now, this dangerous low pressures are expected to stay with us through today, even into tomorrow morning, and this can be harmful on people as frostbites will be developing in minutes on exposed skin. Right now, Winnipeg, it is minus 26. That cold warning in effect. We will be seeing wind chills close to minus 40. Today, we're going to see sunny conditions with highs of near 25 this morning, and the sunny day we're going to get won't really bring a lot of relief, so don't think it's going to warm anything down. It's still going to be extremely cold, so I'll tell you dress warmly. And the same condition for Western Manitoba, the Parkland region, they're going to be seeing similar conditions. But the northern part of the province will be seeing more like milder conditions compared to Winnipeg, but still very cold, though, because their wind chills are going to be like in the range of minus 30s.
It's so funny, eh? Only in Manitoba. Well, maybe in other places, but certainly in Manitoba.
Yeah, easy peasy.
A little warmer up
north. A little
just
warmer, but still
minus
cold.
36 with the wind chill. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, you do have that note on the schools.
So in terms of the Brandon school division, all the schools are open but the buses, that's the one thing that won't be going today. So if the buses outside the city of Brandon will not be operating today, but the schools are open in the Brandon school division, buses will be running within the city of Brandon. So that's the update we got from that school division. Attendance at schools is at parental discretion is what they also said. So if you do see anything going on out there, though, highways overall seem okay. I haven't heard of any major issues. But if you see something going on here in the city, outside the city, give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, now imagine that you're dealing with this cold and you don't have gloves. Main Street Project needs help. They are looking for donations of new or gently used winter gloves and mittens. They're short. Cindy Titus is communications manager with Main Street Project. She spoke to CBC's Faith Fundell about this.
How big is the need right now for your mitts and gloves?
Yeah, it's a big need we have right now. So the cold weather, as we all know, has hit us pretty hard this week. Folks experiencing homelessness are at direct risk of winter weather hazards, frostbite, hypothermia, that kind of thing. A lot of emergency shelters are at capacity every night, and lots of folks, are spending a lot of time outside in the cold, and we have a big need for gloves and mittens.
How many do you need?
I couldn't even really tell you a number. Throughout all of our programming, we're seeing hundreds of people every day, specifically our emergency shelter and our mobile outreach program. These folks, those programs are the most highest need for gloves and mittens, and we're very low on these items right now.
Have you been in a situation yet where someone has asked for gloves or mittens and you've said, "I'm sorry, we just don't have them"?
Yeah. I'll share with you that I recently worked an overnight shift with our mobile outreach team, and it was a couple of weeks ago, so it wasn't quite as cold then as it is now. And in the middle of the night, folks were cold and they were asking us for gloves and mittens, and we had to say no, unfortunately. Thankfully, our teams are very resourceful here and will do all they can to keep people safe. So they had socks on hand to hand out, and offered those to folks to keep their hands warm. But it's better to have the most appropriate item of clothing to be able to provide people. So, folks listening have gloves or mittens that they're no longer using, gently used or new is really helpful. And then just consider the quality of the donation as well. We want to be keeping people safe and warm, especially folks who are spending a lot of time outside, and for folks living in encampments.
What is the risk to folks on the street if they don't have access to these things?
They can lose digits, unfortunately. Hypothermia is very serious. Frostbite is very serious, and it can really impact their health and overall quality of life. So we're really hoping, Manitoba is always very generous to us. So we're hoping with this critical call out for gloves and mittens, folks will step forward and help us out.
When you look at, we live in a cold province, of course. When you sort of look at the past here, how would you characterize the need now compared to what it's been like before? Is this a cyclical thing, or are you noticing something different this time?
Yeah, it definitely tends to be cyclical. That's a really good question, and I appreciate it for sure. We tend to gather donations by season and look for seasonally appropriate clothing. So it is a cyclical thing, but again, Manitobans are always very generous and they care a lot about the community. So hopefully folks can step us to help us out.
That must be hard. You were describing your experience from last week before it was very, very cold. That must be hard for your volunteers and for your workers to say, we don't have this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a struggle for our staff for sure. They are some of the most caring and compassionate people I've ever met. And, I can hear the heartbreak in their voice when they're having to say, no, we don't have a particular item, especially when people are sharing with them, I'm really cold. Do you have a pair of gloves? Do you have a pair of mitts? It's definitely very difficult for them to say no. But, the good thing is that folks can step up to help us out. You can drop donations off here at Main Street Project, and there's information on our website in terms of how to do that. And then we also have our Amazon wish list that's populated with some of these items. So you can visit that. And, if you can't make it down here to donate in person, if you purchase something from our wish list, it'll be mailed directly to us, which is a really handy thing for us to have access to.
And that website is mainstreetproject.ca. What are you hoping people will be extra mindful of in terms of if they look in their closet right now, if they look in their bins, what should they look for?
Again, it's just really speaking to that quality and considering that a lot of the folks that we support are living in encampments. So, they're not coming into the shelter overnight when it's minus 40 with the wind chill. So good quality, really warm, no holes or anything like that if possible. And I've heard from the community that gloves are a little bit better than mittens because it allows folks an opportunity to keep their hands a bit warmer, and they can stick the hand warmers inside of the gloves. But of course, we would accept mittens too. We're not, sorry, I'm saying the opposite thing here. Mittens are a bit more helpful than gloves in terms of keeping folks warm. Sorry about that. But we'll take both.
I've just posted this on my Facebook page. For those of us that have multiple mittens at the back door, it's really just to wrap your head around people putting socks on their hands where we live, where we all live together, to have to stay warm and try to protect their fingers is really sobering. So Main Street Project needs help. mainstreetproject.ca if you have it to give, to help. You can read more about it. That is Cindy Titus talking about the need, communications manager over there. If you want to donate your extra gloves or mittens in good working order, good use, in good order rather, you can donate rather is what I'm trying to say, directly to them as well if you can drop them off. That is a conversation that Cindy was having with Faith Fundel.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
It's minus 26 this morning in Winnipeg, winds are northwest at 3. At the airport, it's minus 32. That's what the thermometer's reading there. It feels like minus 42 with the wind chill. I don't have to tell you to bundle up. You just will. It's so pretty on these days, that clear sky and the sun. But as Abby said, it's not going to do anything for warmth. So high of minus 25, and we do have an extreme cold warning. Call us if you have a problem in traffic, 788-3093. I always like to mention that a lot early when we just get on the air. And just a reminder that the rural buses in the Brandon School Division aren't operating today because of the cold. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, if you heard the national news, you heard a little bit of what happened with his meeting with provincial and territorial premiers yesterday in their video chat. This to discuss Canada-U.S. relations. They talked for 90 minutes, and specifically they were trying to figure out a joint strategy in the face of President-elect Donald Trump's threat to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian exports to the States. To talk about it, David Tabachnik is with us. He's a professor of political science at Nipissing University. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we heard a little bit about this, in our national news, but for those that missed it, what's the real headline coming out of this video meeting?
Well, I think there wasn't a heck of a lot of information provided after the meeting. Apparently there's going to be some more detailed announcements in the days to come. But what we're looking at here is a strategy to secure the border. This is one of the key demands that Trump has put on Canada to stop the flow of illegal migrants and illegal drugs. And so there may be a funding announcement around purchasing more drones, for example, to surveil, and more helicopters to do the same. We have, of course, the world's longest undefended border. This is no easy task, quite expensive indeed. I think the more interesting thing that came out after the meeting was from the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. He actually came out in a much more aggressive stance, suggesting that Ontario might cut off the electricity to particular United American states, which very much relies on Ontario for their electricity needs. So on the one hand, we have a fairly diplomatic approach from the Prime Minister, and then this much more aggressive approach from the Premier of Ontario.
And what's interesting is at the federal level, Chrystia Freeland is saying this morning, at least it's being CBC reporting, she's saying this morning, in response to that we have to, premiers may want to be mindful of sort of regional, threats, as she put it. because a unified front, as you said, a more diplomatic approach is sort of the way they seem to be leaning. It's interesting, though, because Donald Trump, the president-elect, works with sort of the threats. That's sort of been, people have analyzed that as his style. So on the part of Ontario Premier Doug Ford, do you think that's in response, that he may be being, is he, overruling, if you will, what the feds are wanting as an approach and saying, look, this is going to work. I know this kind of person?
Yeah, that could be. I mean, Ford has been quite vocal. He's appeared on Fox News and CNBC. He was just on yesterday before the meeting, and he wasn't quite talking that tough on the air, but he did remind Americans about how much they rely on Canadian energy, not just Ontario electricity, but oil and gas from places like Alberta, as well as critical minerals, which of course are going to become much more important for things like batteries and electric vehicles. So I think, that's Ford's style. He's got pretty good conservative credentials. He can speak directly to Trump supporters in this way. Whether this is an actual break from a unified strategy, I'm not so sure. I mean, just as we say Trump is going to be Trump, I think we're going to also say Ford is going to be Ford, and so you can't kind of cage him in that way. And he's kind of got that bulldog personality.
What about the other? Leaders and the other territorial and premier leaders, including Wab Kinew here from Manitoba?
Yeah, I did read a story about Wab Kinew saying that some conservation officers would be put down to the border. I mean, this is a nice gesture. I don't think it's going to have a real significant impact. Danielle Smith has also appeared on American news outlets talking about Albertan oil and gas. She's even mentioned sort of dusting off the plans for the Keystone Pipeline, which would bring oil sands oil for American refineries. That would further integrate our economies, of course, and I think that's the positive message. Why are we putting up obstacles between the border? We should take those obstacles down and integrate our economies all the more. The problem with that, of course, is obvious. We've been attempting to diversify our economy away from relying so much on the Americans because of this exact scenario where at any given time a new American president can threaten our economy, and we haven't been successful here. So on the one hand, we have to look to other markets so that these kinds of threats won't have such impact, but the fact remains that this massive economy, 10 times larger than Canada's, right to our south, is where we rely on for sending all of our goods and services.
What do you make, meantime, of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? We were talking about the premiers and their responses, but what do you make of him saying that Americans lost a chance to vote a woman into power to be their leader?
Yes, I mean, the timing is not so great, is it? I appreciate, his point. He's saying that he wants women to be involved in politics and that they shouldn't be disappointed by the fact that two presidential candidates lost, two female presidential candidates lost. The implication, obviously, is it's too bad that Trump won. I don't think that's a very good message. Frankly, this was more of a comment about American political culture than a real insult to Donald Trump. But, of course, Trump does have a thin skin, and we have a lot at stake. So comments like that don't help.
We'll leave it there this morning, David. Thank you very much for your analysis.
My pleasure.
More coming up on World Report. That's David Tabachnik, Professor of Political Science at Nipissing University on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. It is cold in Winnipeg. That extreme cold warning extends across all of southern Manitoba and up into Dauphin, Russell, Roblin as well, with wind chills feels like minus 41 in parts, including in Winnipeg. Phil Lamont is coming up here on the show with a business report. And today the Bank of Canada cut interest rates, I should say yesterday, by half a percentage point. Today, analysis of that from Phil. So stay with us. That's right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. Another extreme cold morning for much of Manitoba today. In Winnipeg, sunshine with an icy high of minus 25. Well, Jack Frost is back for a second day as that extreme and dangerously cold weather makes a second visit to much of the province. Wind chills of -40 to -45 mean frostbite is likely in minutes. If you have to be outside, you are advised to cover up and keep moving to maintain your body heat and seek shelter from the wind. Outdoor workers are advised to take regularly scheduled warm-up breaks. A woman who may lose her leg after surgical complications wants someone in Manitoba's healthcare system to take responsibility. Roseanne Milburn got an infection after a procedure in October. She ended up waiting 8 days with an open wound before a bed finally opened for her at the Health Sciences Centre. Because of that delay and the infection that ensued, she was told her leg could not be saved. A spokesperson for Shared Health has apologized for Milburn's ordeal. They also say she has the information to guide her care plan going forward. Milburn calls that a slap in the face.
Because they don't know the pain and suffering I've been going through. And I don't have options because the option they're giving me is live with an infection in my leg for the rest of my life.
Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera has offered Milburn their sympathies. The City of Winnipeg draft budget calls for 36 new police officers. That is less than what Winnipeg Police Service had asked for, but Acting Chief Art Stannard says it's still great news. Kate Kaler at the Social Planning Council believes the money would be better spent by community-based groups. She says poverty reduction is the key to making the city safer. Kaler also questions the city's plan to hire 15 more community safety officers to ride Winnipeg transit buses.
As far as I'm aware, there has been no evaluation of that program. It's not even a year old. I know any number of community-based organizations. I was one of them. They were consulted on that program. We've not seen that report yet, but they're still going to get an expansion. And my question is based on what evidence?
Kaler says not-for-profit groups must prove they have accomplished their goals before getting more funding. Now, the city will not continue to fund space for homeless people in the Millennium Library. The Community Connections program is not included in the new budget. Finance Chair Jeff Brawadi says the funding was already scheduled to end this year.
We've continued to see some challenges at the Downtown Millennium Library, most recently with somebody appearing with an edged weapon, not getting into the library branch. The community connection space is on the outside of that secure area, which in my mind is a safety concern for our employees and for the public.
Brawadi says the city will continue to pay for community safety hosts in the library, as well as 3 social workers who help people inside the library. Now, a budget proposal to reduce the frequency of snow plowing residential streets is getting an icy reception from some Winnipeggers. Justin Delacruz says he was disappointed to learn about the pilot project in the proposed 2025 budget. He says it's going to be bad news for drivers if the city waits until there's 15 centimeters of snow before clearing residential streets.
Our population is growing, more cars are being bought, and our residentials are getting full with vehicles. So, yeah, it's just very inconvenient.
Starting next winter, the pilot project would see how much money could be saved by waiting to start plowing until 15 centimeters of snow has fallen. The current threshold is 10 centimeters. Some remote First Nations in Manitoba have been missing out on critical supplies since the start of the Canada Post strike. The delivery of medicine and pension checks to numerous isolated communities has been halted for weeks. Walter Westesikut is the Grand Chief of the Keewatin Tribal Council. He says 9 of the 11 communities he represents are only accessible by air, making it hard to find alternatives to get parcels in.
The communities in the south, they have different couriers can deliver, pick up packages, make sure they get to their destination. We don't have that luxury in the north. Even the airline service that we do have is not reliable.
Several First Nation leaders in Manitoba are calling for the immediate resolution of the postal strike, but Canada Post and its union remain far apart on key issues. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is preparing to take action on the border, and now that he's briefed the country's premiers on his plans, their talking points are getting a little tougher. Team Canada had a virtual meeting about Donald Trump's tariff threats last night. And in response, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is announcing plans today to shore up security along the Canada-U.S. border. It's believed her plans include sending provincial sheriffs, helicopters, and drones to areas of the border Alberta shares with Montana. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And as always, you can find more Manitoba news, including all the details on the budget, the proposed draft budget. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
So tons of information in there about the budget already with the stories Heather's brought forward in our hard work of our journalists here at CBC Manitoba. So if you have any responses to those, please give us a call at 788-3205 as we build out, thinking about this and what it's going to mean for your pocketbook and for your life and for our city services as well. I want to mention that specifically we're going to dig into the transit fare increase. That's coming up at 10 to 8 this morning, so we're going to hear more about that with the transit advocate. Right now, let's get into the cold weather and our regional forecast with Abby Adiyemi.
Yeah, still dangerously low temperatures expected to stay with us throughout today into Friday morning, with that frostbite developing in minutes and exposed skin, so you need to take care out there. For Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 26 at this time. We do have that extreme cold warning in effect. Frigid air continues with wind chills around minus 40, and it even feels colder than that. We will be seeing sunshine today through the day, but that will not really warm us much. We're only going to see a high of minus 25, but be aware, this morning the wind chill for Winnipeg is going to be feeling like minus 41, so you need to take care out there. Similar condition for the South Central and Pembina Valley region. We're looking at temperatures around minus 28. Heading west to Brandon, minus 33 at this time. Extreme cold warning in effect with wind chills feeling like minus 40. We have a sunny day ahead. Bitterly cold day for that region. Wind chills will feel like minus 45 for folks in Brandon. Frostbite occurs in minutes under this situation, so you might want to take care. In the Parkland region, we're looking at temperatures at minus 29 in Dauphin. Clear skies you're seeing at this time. Also, we have that extreme cold warning in effect. Your wind chill values feels like a minus 40 this morning, so you want to take care. Gimli at minus 31. Extreme cold warning also in effect for the region of for the Interlake region. We will see sunshine today and light winds leading to a high of minus 24. Though the wind chill this morning for folks in Gimli, it's going to feel like minus 40. In let's see now. Going over to the Power and Flame Flow, we're looking at temperatures in both towns seeing minus 32. Sunny skies expected today with some light winds. The high would only get to minus 26, but the wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 37. So you need to take care of exposed skin. For Thompson and Churchill, we're seeing temperatures in Thompson at minus 27 and Churchill is at minus 19 at this time. Both regions seeing drifting snow and blowing snow, and we'll see highs between minus 24 and minus 33. So across board, it's just extremely cold.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's all I can say.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
I'm just laughing because we've got like warnings and whatever, and all, but at the end of the day, it's like put on a sweater, put on a hat, put on everything you own. Is what we need to do today to stay warm. All right, let's get into what is happening. We do have actually a note from Brandon School Division, Corey.
That's right. So the Brandon School Division today, buses outside the city of Brandon will not be running inside the city. They are still running. So that's what we heard from Brandon School Division today. Attendance at schools, they say, is at parental discretion where travel is required. And schools, otherwise, they're all open still in the Brandon School Division. Other than that, I haven't heard of any major issues on the highways or here in the city, but if you do see something going on, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
I'm going to out you, Corey. Phil DeMont is going to join us right now. Hi, Phil.
Hi there.
So Corey and I sit across from each other, and Phil, and when you're about to talk about the interest rates being cut, and Corey actually cheered yesterday at our desk.
No, my mortgage is up in I think a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
So we got a great mortgage rate. Like we got right in there, like in that early mortgage rate. And I know it's going to go up probably, but it's nice watching it slowly go back down a little bit. So.
You're reflective of a lot of people in this country, which is why I brought it up.
I'm cheering, let's keep going, let's keep going down.
What are economists saying about the move, Phil, just to lead your business report here?
Yeah, just tell Corey it's all because of me. That's why his rate's
Oh, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.
There you go. I high five you, brother.
Wow.
Boom.
Phil DeMont from our business report, more power than we thought. Holy, Phil, wow.
My big cranium is beating as we speak. It's interesting, though, because now they figure the big cuts are probably done for a little bit, but it doesn't mean rates aren't going to drop further next year. This week, the central bank cut rates by half a point. 50 basis points is kind of the usual way you talk about this stuff. It's a second supersized cut in a row, 50 basis points. We haven't seen anything that aggressive, Marcy, in this country since 2009. That means the overnight rate, which is the actual rate the bank cuts, now 3.25%. And back in June, it was 4.75%. So you can see how quickly it's coming down. Steep reductions the bank justifies by basically saying, look, the overall economy is slowing faster than we had expected. The third quarter, Canada grew about 1%. That was less than half the growth rate in the second quarter. Inflation's come down as the bank increased interest rates over the past 3 years or so. So the Bank of Montreal now predicting inflation will drop below the 2% target for the Bank of Canada. By the end of this year, it'll go to something like 1.8%. But economists say the bank will pause any big cuts. If you were thinking another 50% there, Corey, that's because they'll probably take a wait-and-see approach to see how the economy responds to these cuts, because there's always a lag in this situation. So you cut them now, and it gets affected 4 or 6 months down the road. But two big factors probably mean interest rates, getting them lower, isn't over quite yet. The threat of U.S. tariffs could slow investment into Canada and the sale of exports into the U.S. That would slow our economy, trying to inoculate Canada by having low interest rates. But also Avery Schenfeld over at the CIBC argues the bank actually has a target, what's called a neutral interest rate, less than 3%. So if that's right, you'd be looking at another couple of quarter percentage point cuts next year. So you've had 1 percentage point over the last 2 meetings. Maybe you're looking at another half percentage point over the next 3.
Let's talk about another story in business news today. Car dealers, at least in the United States, are more optimistic about the sector these days. Why is that bad news for electric vehicles?
Because the same car dealers think Donald Trump will kill the existing EV tax credit Americans get for buying an electric vehicle.
But what about his bro?
No,
they're gonna have a falling out.
I know.
Anyway.
It's kind of that thing. Well, he actually argues against. He's never liked that tax credit. Cox Automotive, that's what I'm picking on. They do a sentiment survey of car dealers every quarter. In the fourth quarter, it popped above 50. It was 40 before, like the previous reading. That means more sellers see more sales because of the election of Donald Trump. So they're optimistic because the Trumpster's in there. But the same dealers seem to look for things like maybe rebates on some car purchases, lower interest rates, driving higher sales. They think Trump will follow through, though, and it's the promise to kill the existing tax refund for buying an EV. That and big tariffs on electric vehicles coming into the States probably will kill sales in that market for a bit because the prices will just be too high. But there's some headwinds here. So where I'm getting with this is the sentiment is, well, Donald Trump's in, that's great for business. But you look at the actual figures, you got a problem. For one thing, the buyers aren't coming back to the car dealerships as quickly as they had hoped. Car dealers have a post-pandemic record high inventory of unsold cars right now. They're just piling up. Then there's car prices. Back in 2022, they were really high. They've come down since then. But the past couple of months, they've started going up again. You add that with the possible tariff on car parts and cars coming into the U.S. So something like 45% of the content of a Ford or a GM, that's imported either from Mexico or Canada. So if you have a 25% tariff, the math is it's an 11% price increase. So if prices start going up, fairly quickly in the U.S., especially if he brings in those tariffs, that optimism for these U.S. car dealers, that probably will crash pretty quickly.
How are the numbers looking this morning? Because in a moment, we're going to do a story about the dollar being super weak.
Yeah, fair enough. The dollar down slightly, trading at 70.61 cents U.S., but yeah, it had been tumbling, especially on American dollar strength after the Trump election. In Europe, mixed reaction or mixed markets right now because the European Central Bank's looking at interest rates today. So France, Germany down slightly, UK up marginally. Strong day in Asia, though. Hong Kong and the Nikkei in Japan up 1.25%. Oil up 13 cents, $70.43 U.S. a barrel. And finally, the gold price down $14, $2,743 U.S. an ounce.
All right, Phil, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Phil DeMont with our business news on CBC at 6:45 a.m. on your Thursday morning. And let's hear more about the Canadian dollar. It is weaker, as we've been saying, than it's been in 5 years. That's due to several factors. So rate cuts, unemployment, and a strong U.S. dollar. And as we head into a new year, 2025, a lower loonie could certainly impact purchasing power. But it may not be as devastating as we think. Personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Huq has details on what she says we should expect.
The Canadian dollar is expected to further weaken in 2025. That means everything we buy outside our borders will get more expensive. So will international travel. Experts say 2025 could mean more sticker shock in places like the grocery store and higher costs for businesses who trade with the U.S.
Part of the reason for that, or really the main reason for that, is that economic prospects in Canada have been underperforming a lot of our global peers, and particularly relative to the U.S. economy.
Nathan Jansen is the assistant chief economist at RBC. He says several pressures are driving our dollar lower. This includes a higher unemployment rate, threats of tariffs from the new U.S. administration, and slower spending by Canadian consumers. Jansen points out the items that could get more expensive.
If you're looking at which products are among the most susceptible to higher prices from weaker Canadian dollars, fresh fruits and vegetables is obviously one of them. There's also pretty much a one-for-one immediate pass-through of a weaker Canadian dollar into our gasoline prices. So some of those essentials, prices for those essentials are rising.
The lower dollar is also affecting our travel plans. Data from the aviation tracking firm Cirium reveals the number of Canadian flights bound for the United States this December is slated to fall 2.5% year over year. Meanwhile, domestic capacity is set to jump nearly 10% compared to December 2023.
So people, especially people who go down for the winters and spend, time in Florida or Arizona or other parts in the States, there has been some concern.
Devin Catalan is a portfolio manager and certified financial planner at Verican Capital Management. He says his snowbird clients have been worried about the cost of their annual trip. Some have decided to cut down their normal 6-month journey to 3 months. All this could translate to good news for Canadian tourism as our dollars stay here. Catalan also points out that a weaker dollar is beneficial for anyone invested in the U.S. markets.
Being exposed to the U.S. market also has you being exposed to the U.S. dollar. So people who were invested globally over the past number of years benefited from the dollar doing very well. And typically, the U.S. dollar tends to work as a little bit of a hedge in bad markets.
Catalan has this advice for anyone worried about the effect of a weaker Canadian dollar on their investments.
Some of the best companies in the world are in the U.S. And so if you want exposure to those companies, you need to have that U.S. exposure.
RBC economist Jansen points out that a number of items Canadians spend on are not affected by a lower Canadian dollar, as those products and services are consumed here. Things like haircuts and restaurant visits, shelter costs like mortgage and rent and servicing debt, paying income tax. None of those are directly impacted by a weaker Canadian dollar. He says spending is slowing in Canada, and that should bring prices down as demand falls.
And because the economy has been softer, some of those domestic supply chain prices have actually been falling. The cost of freight trucking has been falling. So that that softening, broader softening in the economy, obviously isn't good news, but it does to an extent insulate consumer prices from the impacts of a weaker Canadian dollar.
Both experts expect the economy and the Canadian dollar to be weaker in the first part of 2025, but believe the overall impact on Canadians will be manageable. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed Huq.
We asked you to help make the season kind in support of Harvest Manitoba. And Manitoba, did you deliver? We donated a day of programming to help those in need, and you donated over $500,000. From all of us at CBC, thank you for your generosity, and thank you for helping make the season kind in support of those in need.
Thank you, Manitoba!
Just amazing how people came together last Friday. Really lovely. So, yeah, heartfelt thank you, Manitoba. It is 11 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening this morning. Thanks for joining us on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and we are here with the team at the show. So, Heather Wells in our news department, back with next headlines just before 7. Also in the control room this morning, a big happy good morning to Abby Adiemi, to Corey Funk, and to Kevin Ipatebo. So, always nice to be together with crew today. In Winnipeg, our high is minus 25. We've got that extreme cold warning for the city of Winnipeg. Extends all across southern Manitoba and into Westman as well, and up to through Roblin and Riding Mountain National Park as well. With wind chills, it'll feel about like minus 41. Brandon is not running rural buses this morning, just so you're aware. So call the school if you can't get your student there. And travel is obviously, at your discretion. And this is because of the extreme cold and conditions on the roadways out that way. Well, next on the show, this week is the best light show on offer, and it's not limited to all of the festive twinkling lights. I'm talking about the last big meteor shower of the year that's coming up. It's about to peak. So today is December 12th. This is tomorrow into Saturday, the 13th and 14th, where it peaks. I'm talking about the Geminid meteor shower. It will light up the sky with shooting stars. And for more on the Geminids, CBC senior science reporter Nicole Mortellero is with us to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm a bit bummed, I got to say, Nicole. I was just looking at our skies for Winnipeg, and we might luck out, but we've had all these beautiful, clear, cold days, and I thought, perfect. And then I looked at Saturday into Sunday, and there's a mix of sun and clouds, so we might have not perfect viewing. What time is this thing going to be really at its peak?
So it is, as you said, it is on Friday into Saturday. But I will say, you can look the days ahead and maybe a couple days after. So it's you can, like, I went out just before, just like about an hour before sunrise, and I actually saw one myself. So definitely try to actually go out and catch them right now.
Okay, so we've got nice clear skies actually into today and tonight, so that's good news. What exactly is a meteor shower, and if people are out looking, what should they be looking for?
So, so a meteor shower occurs when Earth plows through a debris stream that has been left over from a comet. And in this case, it's an asteroid. It's rare for an asteroid. But this is, as you see comets in their tails, that's shedding off debris. And these tiny particles, so let's say they're, dust-sized grains to centimeters, they burn up in our atmosphere and produce those beautiful streaks that we see across the sky. And that's our meteors, our meteor shower. And I mean, yes, you can see a meteor on any given night, but it's harder. But meteor showers, it's when many are seen. And in this case, with the Geminids, you can see upwards now, under ideal, perfect conditions, 150 an hour. But don't expect to see that, but you will see dozens, absolutely.
What is particularly special about the Geminid meteor shower? Is it, as you're alluding to, just sort of the amount that you might see?
Yes. So the Geminids are really special because not only the amount, but also because they're very reliable. Some showers peak and they have outbursts and but the Geminids have just been reliable since it started, since occurred. And also a special thing that I learned, I did not know this, but the Geminids actually can drop meteorites, little particles like other, pieces of this asteroid that it comes from, onto the ground. It's been seen in Europe, but no one's found any yet. But I'm also going to say, don't worry, you won't get hit by anything.
Any suggestions about sky watching overall this week to get the best view, like in terms of if you're just looking up, or should you have special equipment obviously that would help, but do you need special equipment?
No, definitely. That's the best thing with meteor showers. You don't need anything but your own two eyes. I will note that in the sky, sort of in the eastern direction after sunrise, you'll see something really, really bright in the sky in the southeast, and that's Jupiter. And then you might also notice a little red kind of star, and I'm air quoting, and that's Mars.
Thanks very much for giving us the tee up, Nicole. People will be looking up, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That's senior science reporter for CBC, Nicole Mortellero.
Seriously? Who wants socks when you can give the gift of comedy?
The Winnipeg Comedy Festival is back April 29th to May 4th, and now is the time to snag some laughs. Plus, get a taste of what to expect right now with the 2024 Fest streaming on CBC Gem. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival, proudly sponsored by CBC. It's seriously funny. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
6:55 is the time right now, and it is minus 26 in downtown Winnipeg, minus 32 at the airport, with wind chill feels like minus 42. Corey Funk's pop back in a moment. We're going to get a bit of a rural bus update. It's interesting, though, because, well, actually, why don't you do that now?
Yeah. A couple of things, actually. So there's a rural update. I got something happening in the city here, too. So the Brandon School Division buses are not operating today outside of the city of Brandon. Inside they are, and all the schools are still open. But if you're taking a bus outside the city to get in, it won't be operating because of obviously this really, really cold conditions. Also, just one other heads up. Just got a call from Jill on the commuter line. She said northbound Pembina, just outside of the Victoria Hospital, there's a multi-vehicle collision there that's blocking the median and center lane, so keep right to get around that. No emergency vehicles are on scene or anything at this point. So that's the calls I got. If you see anything else, 204-788-3093.
I was going to just say that on mornings like this, I'm always mindful of how things just don't work in the cold sometimes.
There's the amount of stalled cars that just go
Right?
go through the roof right now.
The craziest story I ever had over the years is I used to do daily hits. That was my whole job. If you're a longtime listener, then you'll know that. Every day I was out somewhere in the city. And I convinced this poor soul at Fort White Alive to do a live ice fishing hit with me, like a live little interview on the air. And he was like, I think it's going to be too cold. I'm like, no, we can do it. And the day before, he was like, I think it's going to be too cold. I kept saying, like, we can do it. So I convinced him, and he's like, all right, I'll meet you. So I get up. It is a morning like this where like it feels like minus 41. I go down there, got all my equipment. Corey, I'm like trudging all my equipment down the bank, totally with this guest. He's like being a good sport. Takes out his auger, because we're going to have that sound to make the hole in the ice, right? Everything. The thing doesn't work. And and I convinced him, and we're out there. It was terrible. It was 5:30 in the morning. I felt off. I still feel awful. This is like 20 years later. Well, maybe 15 years later.
No.
Yeah.
Should have brought a hand auger. See, that's the move.
I know. Everything was seizing, not working. It's like when
nightmare.
sometimes our radio equipment back in the day wouldn't go on if it's too cold. Anyway, we stood there and we did the interview about how ice fishing was great, but we couldn't do it.
And you couldn't hear anything. We're outside. Cool. It's cold.
Oh, Winnipeg.
Fun.
All right, let's get to headlines and turn to more serious matters. It's 3 minutes to 7 and Heather Wells is in.
Good morning. Well, the city budget calls for 36 new police officers for Winnipeg. Kate Kaler at the Social Planning Council believes that money would be better spent by community-based groups. She says poverty reduction is the key to making the city safer. First Nations leaders are calling for an immediate resolution to the ongoing Canada Post strike. The Crown Corporation is the only courier that flies in parcels to a number of isolated communities in northern Manitoba. And this just out, and you will be hearing more about this coming up on World Report, but the Time Magazine Person of the Year is, drumroll, Donald Trump. The magazine cites his remarkable comeback, so we'll hear more through the day. Donald Trump, Time Magazine's Person of the Year. More Manitoba News at 7:30.
Sorry, Heather, I interjected with my late drum roll, which was really lame. I just went...
Oh, that's impressive. I like it.
Yeah, you like it?
That's a fast drum roll.
Yeah, it is. Not a surprise that the president-elect is the Person of the Year for sure.
He's shaken up the world, really.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the next hour of Information Radio, we're going to be looking at the budget shakeup. Heather was just going through those headlines. We're going to have a specific interview about the transit fares going up, so we'll have a look at that. Also, speaking of drum rolls, it's only the it is the only full-time Air Force band in Canada, and it is right here in Winnipeg. We're going to hear about how the Royal Canadian Air Force Band is preparing for its big holiday concert. It's a fundraiser for the United Way. And then right after 7 o'clock, more detail on that story that Heather's been also mentioning about the Winnipeg woman who's facing that choice about whether or not to amputate her leg. Few of us can imagine. It is minus 26, as mentioned, in Winnipeg. It feels on exposed skin a lot colder than that, like around minus, with wind chills, minus 41 this morning is what it feels like. Our high is only going to be minus 25, so bundle up and know that there's an extreme cold warning. 788-3093. If you do want to reach us in traffic, as Corey mentioned, he will pick up the phone. And we'll be back live with you after World Report. It's 1 minute to 7 o'clock in your national and international news. This is CBC.
Today on The Current.
After over a decade of war, people in Syria are rebuilding their lives under a new government. We'll speak with people there, from a former political prisoner to someone who rescued people during the war, about what everyday life looks like in Syria now. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is preparing to take action on the border. And now that he has briefed the country's premiers on his plan, their talking points are getting a little tougher. Team Canada had a virtual meeting about Donald Trump's tariff threat last night. And Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with details. Janice, we've heard a lot of words from our political leaders. When does the action happen?
Marcia, we were already expecting Monday's fall economic statement to include a $1 billion border package. The heads of the RCMP and the Border Services Agency are in front of a parliamentary committee this afternoon. So we'll see if they've got specifics about what that kind of money buys in terms of surveillance gear, infrastructure, or additional officers. But beyond this budget boost, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc also says there's a bill coming.
There is a moment where we can make increased investments in both the RCMP and CBSA. Some of it may require legislative authorities, but there are a number of exciting moments coming up in the next few days.
Conservatives have offered to help pass a border package, but would it include more than just new spending? Could it expand the jurisdiction of border officers so they can patrol the entire length of the border, not just the designated crossings, for example? Premiers have also asked Health Canada, as the drug regulator, to be more involved in the tracing and crackdown on precursor chemicals for fentanyl. Quebec Premier François Legault also wants tighter visa rules. And Immigration Minister Mark Miller said yesterday his department needs to improve the integrity of its visa controls. He's also hinted at changes to the Safe Third Country Agreement. Will all this be enough for the Americans? Because, yes, the incoming Trump administration is using this tariff threat to get what it wants on border security, but it also wants the revenue it believes it can make off these big new tariffs.
So what else can Canada do to deter tariffs?
Ontario Premier Doug Ford suggested that Canada needs to be pushing on more economic pain points, leveraging its natural resources, even perhaps threatening the Americans' energy security.
But we'll use every tool in our toolbox, including cutting them off energy that we're sending down there.
Now, look, as with all retaliatory moves, there's a real risk of mutual self-harm if you're going to start talking about throttling the heavily integrated cross-border electricity grid, for example. For now, Chrystia Freeland is encouraging premiers not to focus on sector-specific threats or exemptions. Keep trying to exempt Canada as a whole, full stop, from these tariffs.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. In Iran, starting tomorrow, women who do not observe the country's strict hijab laws could face the death penalty. The country is expected to begin implementing a new chastity law. As Crystal Gomansing reports, it comes at a time of increased resistance by women.
They have already reached suffocating levels of repression.
Nasim Papiani works closely with women and girls in Iran. Amnesty International's senior campaigner for Iran says the 74 articles set to come into effect Friday are draconian.
The law also has a provision where private businesses, private entities, if they have women and girls on their premises who are unveiled, can face fines. This is an effort to force private entities to also surveil and police the bodies of women and girls.
Mahsa Amini's name has global recognition. Anger erupted in Iran and around the world when the young woman was killed in 2022. She was originally arrested for not properly wearing her hijab.
It's not only just about, women's right and mandatory hijab. It's all about our freedom.
Safe in her home in Toronto, Azam Jangravi sits up a bit straighter as she recalls the day she unveiled and waved her headscarf in Tehran. An act of resistance 6 years ago that led to her arrest, her family being threatened, and her having to flee her country.
I protested against mandatory hijab because of my daughter. because of my nieces, because of all of Iranian girls.
New law, she says, won't silence the women of Iran. They lived with hijab enforcement since the early 80s. In the decades since, acts of defiance, she says, have grown. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Canadian creditors vote on a proposed settlement today. It would see three major tobacco manufacturers pay out billions. Imperial Tobacco Canada, JTI McDonald Corp, and Rothmans, Benson and Hedges have been in negotiations for 5 years. The proposed settlement includes $24 billion for provinces and territories trying to recover smoking-related healthcare costs. $4 billion for Quebec smokers who filed class action lawsuits, and another $2.5 billion for smokers across the rest of Canada. Ontario municipalities are voting on next year's budgets, and taxpayers are raising the alarm about high salaries for bureaucrats. CBC News has analyzed Ontario's public salary data. It shows top city staffers are taking home big raises and benefits packages. And as Priscilla Kisang-Huang reports, critics say their compensation is out of touch with regular Ontarians.
We're all astonished.
Frank Johnson is one of several residents who contacted CBC from Tay Valley, a township of 6,000 people south of Ottawa, shocked after a proposed property tax hike of more than 11%. The main reason, staff salaries. The CAO there has been getting a 10 to 13% raise yearly. Her salary now more than $164,000. The township says increased wages are necessary, but Johnson says
at some point, somebody has got to say stop.
CBC News analyzed salaries of some 300 top municipal staffers, who together made more than $65 million last year, and some got huge boosts from 10 to 111% increases. Some steep changes were due to job transitions, but the data also shows some CAOs pocketing an additional $60,000 yearly in benefits.
A tale of two Ontarios. And so
Jay Goldberg with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
This is money that's going to have to come out of the pockets of hardworking families to pay these salaries.
David Arbuckle is with AMCTO, an association for municipal leaders. He says it's a tough job, and high pay might help recruit and retain staff.
An investment in that senior bureaucrat is really an investment in community building.
Meanwhile, Tay Valley Township says it's since cut the tax hike to 7.4%, but it's still a record high for the community. Priscilla Kisang-Huang, CBC News, Ottawa.
Nearly 1,500 Americans will have their sentences commuted today, and another 39 people will be pardoned by U.S. President Joe Biden. The White House made the announcement this morning. The CBC's Richard Madden is following the story for us. And Richard, tell us more about who Biden is pardoning.
Yeah, this is the largest single-day act of clemency in modern U.S. history. President Joe Biden announcing he'll commute the sentences for some 1,500 Americans who were released from prison to home confinement during the pandemic. Another 39 inmates pardoned for nonviolent crimes like simple drug possessions, or former members of the military convicted for their private conduct because of their sexual orientation. Now, Biden said in a statement, America was built on second chances, so he's extending mercy on those who've demonstrated remorse and rehabilitations. Now, these pardons follow his controversial pardon of his son Hunter, who was convicted of gun and tax crimes, and Biden says he's reviewing other petitions and to expect more presidential pardons before he leaves office.
Are there other pardons on the horizon?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Biden is under pressure by advocacy groups to commute sentences to inmates on death row. Biden campaigned on ending the death penalty back in 2020, but never followed through. But he's also now being urged by some in his own party to publicly call on New York's governor to pardon incoming President Donald Trump in his hush money conviction from earlier this year. Take a listen to Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman.
And in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate. And I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases.
Now, Biden's staff are also reportedly considering taking the extraordinary step of issuing preemptive pardons to protect top government officials who've been critical of Trump and who could be targeted when he takes office just over 5 weeks from now.
Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden reporting from Washington. And Time Magazine's 2024 Person of the Year, Donald Trump. He was named just minutes ago. The U.S. president-elect is back in his hometown, New York, where he will be honored and ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Time says Trump had a remarkable political comeback. Trump was also Time's Person of the Year in 2016 when he was first elected to the White House. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report, News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, it's dangerous cold again across southern Manitoba and up through Riding Mountain this morning. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio, your morning show for Thursday. This hour on the program, we're going to be hearing about some special music. The Royal Canadian Air Force is getting ready to go home for the holidays. We're going to get a preview of the band's charity fundraising concert. In addition, this hour on the program, the city budget is being talked about and analyzed since it was released yesterday. Transit fares are set to go up in 2025. That's one of the budget lines. We're going to have analysis of that. We're also going to talk about snow clearing changing, and of course, your taxes are up. So if you want to weigh in on the budget, cbc.ca/Manitoba is where to read about it, and you can weigh in at 788-3205. Stay with us. Headlines in a moment. I rarely get to say this just in, but if you're watching on YouTube, you saw that this just came in to me. And so just before we turn to headlines, due to extreme cold, bus routes are canceled this morning in the Franco-Manitoban School Division. So that is brand new. And also, as Corey's been mentioning, the Brandon School Division is not running buses outside of the city of Brandon today. This is all because of extreme temperatures. So in the Brandon Division, attendance at schools is at parental discretion if you have to travel. So be careful out there. Let's get to headlines now with Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. And on this icy morning, some 1,100 Winnipeggers are without heat and lights. Manitoba Hydro says an outage in East Kildonan is because of downed power lines. Hydro crews are working on the problem. They hope to have lights and heat back on by about 8 o'clock this morning. They also say some traffic lights in the area, that's East Kildonan, may also not be working. Some Winnipeggers are giving the cold shoulder to snow clearing pilot project proposed in the first draft of the city's 2025 budget. The pilot would see if any money can be saved by waiting for 15 centimeters of snow to fall on residential streets instead of 10 before plowing begins. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
So just before we turn away from that, Heather, the snow plowing changes that are coming to our city, you and I were talking in the newsroom just for perspective that in other cities they deal with this in very different ways to begin with.
They absolutely do. I lived in Regina for a while. I've got friends in Saskatoon. Neither of those cities actually plow residential streets at all, unless there's a huge dump of snow. But through the winter, driving on a residential street in Regina and Saskatoon is like driving over boulders because that snow has been left there all winter.
I can't even imagine that. So some people must just not be able to get around it all then. Like if you're living with mobility issues, I can't even fathom that.
Do you know, someone called Winnipeg snow clearing of residential streets the Cadillac of snow clearing?
Yeah, well, it's just interesting to have that perspective, right? How it's going to impact people here in other cities, obviously already. You must have to band together on your street. Then, like, what did you do? Were there mornings where your neighbors would have to dig you out a lot, or what?
Well, no, you just get used to it. And the thing is, though, I think some of those cities, Regina, Saskatoon, Edmonton also does not plow residential streets. They don't get as much snow, perhaps, as Winnipeg does.
If you've lived in one of those cities, as Heather has, weigh in and let us know what it was like for you and versus Winnipeg. Thanks, Heath.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's get into what's going on with the actual weather. We're not going to get more snow today, but cold is the headline there. And Abby's in with those details.
Yeah, cold is the main menu for today. And also, if you're driving out, don't forget to unplug your car because this is that season. I call it the season of the headless winter snake because you get to see those cods in the middle of the road.
Yeah, flying around.
But right now, it is cold outside. Extreme cold warning in effect for most of the region as a frigid air mass settled in last night. We should see this with that combined northern winds making the wind chill feel like minus 40 and even colder in most of the region. Right now, Winnipeg minus 27. It is clear outside. We have that cold one in effect, and we should be seeing temperatures get to a high of minus 25 for the city today, and the wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 41. Frostbite can occur in minutes on exposed skin, so you need to take it easy. Though we will see some sunny skies, but that won't bring a lot of relief from this extreme cold, so you just want to prepare accordingly. In other regions like western Manitoba, the Interlake Parkland region, we're going to see similar extreme conditions, but up north, it is cold. We're seeing light snow, drifting snow, and blowing snow for that region with wind chills around minus 33. Right now at the Fox, it is minus 27.
Let's get to the commute now. Corey Funk, what do we know now?
Yeah, a couple things to keep an eye out for here in the city. Got a call from Jill, northbound Pembina, right around Markham, which is near the Victoria Hospital. The center and middle lanes are blocked by a multi-vehicle collision. City also says the southbound median lane on Pembina right at that area is also blocked right now, so could see some pretty big backups around there this morning. As well, got a call from Dan on a bike. He says it's cold, it's slow out there if you're biking. He's on a fat bike, and he said even he slipped this morning. It's actually surprisingly polished out there if you're biking. That was on the road. So he says especially today, give some cyclists some space if you're in a car, because it's surprisingly slippery out there. So thanks for that call, Dan. Thanks for that call, Jill. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, let's build now on a story that you may have heard reported in our news today. It's about Roseanne Milburn, who lives here in the city, and she's facing a terrible choice. She's 61 years old. She loves to garden, hike, and camp in the outdoors. But Roseanne Milburn waited for knee replacement surgery for 6 years, and when she got her surgery in October, she suffered a post-operation infection in the knee. And now, following attempts to treat it, she may lose her leg. She says her other option is to be on antibiotics to control the infection for the rest of her life. Here's Roseanne speaking with CBC's Ian Fraze.
This is life-changing. I feel I have no choice if I want the infection gone. That's my only option, and the doctor told me that's my only option.
Roseanne and her husband, Dan Milburn, are frustrated, they say, because in dealing with the infection, they say Roseanne was sent to multiple hospitals and was left with an open wound for 8 days because there were no beds at HSC. They feel this was preventable. CBC reporter Ian Fraze spoke to Dan on Monday.
The healthcare system failed my wife, and now because of that, she's going to lose her leg.
I mean, you've been outspoken before, you've been going through this ordeal, but like to hear about the leg amputation, it's just like another blow. Can you walk us through how that felt?
Well, we weren't expecting it. I had stepped away for a day to do some self-reflection, take care of myself, because I've been coming back to the hospital every day, and then we had a meeting late Friday evening with her healthcare team, and that because she had been waiting too long with an open wound, that the leg wasn't salvageable. There's a dead tendon. The tendon that bends her knee is dead, and even the surgeon recommended amputation, and so that's where we are. She's going to be transferred sometime today to the Concordia for the operation to happen on Friday.
So on Friday is when they told you amputation?
Yeah.
Could you walk us through that moment when you heard that?
She was pretty emotional, and I was pretty emotional. It's still hard, but I got to be strong for her. I'll cry out here, but I won't cry in front of her. It's emotional because nobody has asked, can we help you? We don't know. Where does she get a prosthetic? What's the next moves? We don't know any of that. It's slowly draining us financially coming here every day. I went to the hospital for for less than an hour, and I went to buy her a scooter, and it was $8 in parking. It's the whole thing is It's so much to take in at once. She actually had a dream her first night in the Concordia that she was going to lose her leg. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. Don't worry about that. And now it's happening.
I mean, you've described it a little bit, or at least offline, as kind of like a little bit of mourning period, right?
Yeah.
Of losing a leg, because you don't anticipate that.
No.
What have some of those thoughts been like? Like when you look forward, how does life change?
It's going to change drastically. You know, we have dogs and animals and everything else that are all excited to see her, and they haven't seen her in so long. And you know, I go home at night and I cry for an hour and try to keep the dogs entertained, and then I go to bed. That's what I've been doing for 3 weeks. I get up, come here, go home. Get up, come here, go home. Time's overwhelming. Even trying to get a lawyer, it's super hard to get somebody to talk to. You know, like we've been trying to get a lawyer for a week, trying to put pressure on somebody to get something done, and I don't know what to do.
Are you, I think, critical incident report? I think you were considering that. Have you done that?
I'm going to be doing that this week. I got so much to do, and it's just me. So I want to do a critical incident report. I want to report the original surgeon to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. You know, he didn't have a plan. He started cutting them without making sure there was a bed available here.
What should have been done?
Like she keeps on saying, you know, the infection was dead. It had run its course. The original infection, she could have waited another week. You know, she was hoping that they had everything lined up, but they didn't.
What about Christmas? How does that change?
Christmas will be different this year. We have a big family gathering we have every year. I don't know, should we up to going? Now we go to, for over 50 years, my family has been renting a hall in Steinbach, and we gather every Christmas, and I don't think she'll go this year.
What does Christmas normally look like?
It's fun, it's joyful, it's happy, you know. She likes to put up the tree, but none of our kids are coming this year, so I don't know if that would have happened or not, but that was her. She would do the tree, she would put some lights in the window. I'm the guy who puts the lights outside, and she's the lady who decorates the window and puts the lights in the house. So, and that's not going to happen this year. You know, we're outdoors people. She likes to garden. She likes to go fishing. We like to go camping. I'm sure we'll still do that, but it'll be a lot different. You know, we don't know anything. We don't know if she's going to get a prosthetic, if we have to pay for a prosthetic. Nobody tells us squat, which is really frustrating. We have to figure out how she's going to get around in the house, how we're going to get her into the house. We're going to get ramps or what we're going to do. And
how is she doing?
She's emotionally ruined. She has PTSD, which was treated and she was doing good. But this has put her back 15 years. Like highs and lows. You know, one day you're getting ready for surgery and the next day you're finding out you're losing your leg. It's devastating.
That is Dan Milburn, Roseanne Milburn's husband, in conversation with the CBC's Ian Fraze. So Roseanne could lose her leg tomorrow after she suffered a post-operative infection after a knee surgery. CBC reached out to Shared Health for some more details on what happened here, and they sent a statement. Here's part of what it said, quote, Shared Health recognizes the significant emotional toll the situation has had on this patient and her family and apologizes on behalf of the healthcare system for any added pain, stress, and harm that occurred during her care. It went on to say Shared Health's patient relations office and multiple care teams have had extensive contact with this individual and continue to offer her a variety of supports while in our care, end quote. And if you want to read more about the story and how this also which includes a timeline, by the way, of what happened to her and her knee, to Roseanne, please go to read the story at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
For breaking news as it happens, stay with CBC News. For the latest updates, and what it means for Canadians. Stay with CBC News. When the biggest stories break, both at home and around the world, stay with CBC News.
Thursday morning, it's cold out there, and that means it's leading to a lot of problems out here in Winnipeg. So it feels like minus 42 at the airport with the wind chill. Right now, it is minus 27. That's our actual temperature. But right now, we have 1,100 Winnipeggers in East Kildonan without power. We're going to hear more about that in the news, so stay tuned for that. Also, we have buses that are canceled in the Franco-Manitoban School Division because of the extreme cold. No buses will run in Franco-Manitoban Division. Brandon School Division is not running rural buses this morning. So those that bus service has been canceled as well. And just another traffic note, pardon me, Corey was mentioning northbound Pembina, the centre and middle lanes, and also southbound Pembina. This is at the area out in front of Victoria Hospital, sort of, on Pembina. There's been multiple vehicle incident there, and so you could have problems getting through that area or be delayed. Please call the traffic line if you have any updates to these or anything new to add. 788-3093 is where you can reach us. Well, turning to brighter news, still ahead, the Royal Canadian Air Force is getting ready to go home for the holidays. We're going to get a musical preview of the band's charity fundraising concert that's happening locally. That's right after your 7:30 news. Right now, though, let's turn our attention to sports and Scott Regier, who's back with us. Hello.
Hey, Marcy.
So the Jets are back in action tonight, playing kind of a bogeyman of sorts, right?
Yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights. Between the playoffs and the regular season, Marcy, the Jets have only won once in their last 12 attempts against their Sin City opponents. That one win, by the way, in the playoffs, where Winnipeg took the opening game before essentially being swept. While that losing streak could be top of mind for some, head coach Scott Arniel says the bigger concern is matching the intensity of the recent Cup champion Golden Knights.
They're Stanley Cup champions a couple years ago. They got some guys that know how to win. It's no different than we run into Colorado. They give us the same kind of headaches that series we had against Florida. These teams that have won, there's maturity, there's a confidence that they play with. You have to be at your best when you play them. We learned that lesson against Florida down there. We weren't at our best. We came home and we played at our best, and it was a big difference.
Arniel went on to point out that were it not for a single mistake last month, the Jets might have come out on top against Vegas. Such are the stakes against championship pedigree opponents like Vegas. Injury front-wise, Arniel revealed that David Gustafsson is indeed in concussion protocol after a bad fight against the Bruins the other night. No word on whether Gustafsson will be back soon. Puck drop, 7 o'clock tonight from Canada Life Centre.
And I suppose, Scott, it's not a bogeyman, it's a boogeyman.
Boogeyman.
Although
I read it. I know if you read it, I think it's bogeyman, but we know it. I know, I get it.
Unless it's golf.
Right.
Then you could have
then it's a
bogeyman.
Bogeyman would be totally legit.
All right, we're totally digressing. Let's talk soccer. As expected, FIFA announced that Saudi Arabia will host the Men's World Cup in 2034. What do you think we should expect from that tournament?
Well, that because of temperatures in the desert that routinely reach 40 Celsius and beyond, that this tournament's going to be held in December or January. And that with the kingdom's long history of human rights abuses, it's going to be a heavily scrutinized tournament. Here's Saudi Sports Minister Prince Abdulaziz.
It's open to everyone. I invite everyone to come. They will see something that they have never seen before, and they will experience something that they have never experienced anywhere else. If there is one thing that I've learned in my journey in sports is that nothing's impossible. Yes, we have ambitious stadiums and ambitious preparations, but I think that is why we're promising everyone that it will be an exceptional World Cup.
Part of what will make it exceptional are the one-of-a-kind stadiums that are planned. One will be on the seaside with a ripple design made to look like a Mexican wave. Another will be built on the edge of a cliff, accessible only by high-speed cable cars. And then there's the Stadium Marcy that will be part of a still-to-be-built futuristic city in the country's northwest. That city will be car-free, and it's built vertically with walkways set higher than the Empire State Building. Some say these planned architectural wonders amount to little more than sports washing.
Let's go from the desert to the ice. And some big news, actually, in figure skating.
Yeah, Diana Stellato-Dudek, Marcy, is a step closer to her Olympic dream. The world champion skater gained Canadian citizenship yesterday.
So much stress lifted, so much hard work rewarded, and now Max and I were free to realize our Olympic dream. I really feel like a Canadian also, and of course with my efforts to try to learn French to really be a Quebecer too. So yeah, I feel like it does mean more than just for skating. Like I've felt Canadian for a while.
Born and raised in the States, Stellato-Dudek moved to Quebec in 2019 after she met her Paris partner, Maxime Deschamps. At 41, she won gold this year at the World Championships, becoming the oldest woman to win a title at the event. She actually retired when she was just a teenager because of injuries, but then in her subsequent career as an esthetician was convinced she could compete again. The aha moment came during a team-building exercise where employees were asked, what's something you'd do if you knew you couldn't fail? Quite a story.
Wow, that's a great question. Can you answer it?
Can I answer it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be a soccer player.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't
what I
answer.
wanted to be. That's why I'm here.
Ask me tomorrow. I got to think about that.
All right.
Take care. Scott Regier, our sports reporter, not a soccer player, but maybe tomorrow he'll change his mind. I hope he's back. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's a dry cold. Minus 27 right now in downtown Winnipeg. Out at the airport, it's minus 31. The wind chill, minus 42. In Winnipeg today, a high of minus 25. Under the sun. It is day 2 of an extreme cold across much of Manitoba. Wind chills of minus 40 to minus 45 mean frostbite. If you do have to be outside, you're being advised to cover up and keep moving to maintain your body heat and seek shelter from the wind. Outdoor workers are being advised to take regularly scheduled warm-up breaks. On this frigid morning, some 1,100 Winnipeggers are without heat and lights. Manitoba Hydro says an outage in East Kildonan is because of downed power lines. Hydro crews are working on the problem and hope to have power back on by 8 o'clock this morning in about half an hour. Some traffic lights in the area may also not be working. A Manitoba woman who waited years for knee surgery is now dealing with the news she will likely lose her leg. Roseanne Milburn got an infection after the procedure in October. A surgeon then removed dead tissue from her knee, but wasn't able to stitch up the wound right away. She ended up waiting 8 days before a bed opened up for her at the Health Sciences Centre. Because of that delay, she was told they wouldn't be able to save her leg. Milburn says the news was like a slap in the face.
And I'm tired of the healthcare system passing the buck. Tired of it. Be accountable. I'm ex-military. You're accountable. Do something, you admit it, you screwed up, you fix it, you never do it again.
A spokesperson for Manitoba Health, Manitoba Shared Health, has offered Milburn an apology, and Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera has offered their sympathies. The average homeowner in Winnipeg will pay $120 more in property taxes next year. People with houses assessed higher than $371,000 will pay even more as the city jacks up prices by almost 6%. Mayor Scott Gillingham recognizes this is not a popular move.
This is a really, really difficult decision. I don't take lightly that, for the first time in decades, we have a tax increase at this amount. But I would rather do what I believe the citizens of Winnipeg need for the future than to try to protect myself and ourselves from public criticism.
Gillingham says Winnipeg is still the most affordable major city in Canada. He says there are no cuts to services in this budget. No city facilities will be closed. The $1 million community grants program will be fully restored. Now, some Winnipeggers have a frosty reaction to a snow clearing pilot project proposed in that draft budget. The pilot would see if any money can be saved by waiting for 15 centimeters of snow to fall on residential streets before plowing begins. The current threshold is 10 centimeters. Amanda Rose says the way it works now is just fine.
I hope that enough Winnipeggers say, we don't want a pilot. We need you guys to plow the roads. We don't need to put the, for the car insurance and the roads and accidents. Let's put the safety first.
Mayor Gillingham insists it's not a service cut and says estimates suggest the city could avoid one citywide residential snow clearing operation each year with that change. It would start next fall for the 2025-2026 snow clearing season. For the latest on the budget, you can head to cbc.ca/Manitoba. First Nations leaders are calling for an immediate resolution to the ongoing Canada Post strike. The Crown Corporation is the only courier that flies in parcels to a number of isolated communities in Manitoba's north. But the strike, now into week 4, means the delivery of critical supplies has also been halted for those many weeks. Walter Westesikut is Grand Chief of Keewatin Tribal Council.
When there's no mail moving, then prescriptions are not being filled. They are not receiving any payments that they're expecting to receive, and they're not able to make payments on their bills. So it's quite a huge impact for people that are living in isolated communities.
Canada Post and its union remain far apart on key issues. And Donald Trump has been named Time Magazine's Person of the Year. The magazine cites Trump's remarkable comeback from ostracized former president to now president-elect following a decisive victory in the November U.S. election. Trump is in New York today to accept the honor and ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8 and find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get to what's happening in the regional forecast. Abby Adeyemi is here to fill us in.
We are looking at the dangerously low temperatures expected across the province today, and that will stay with us into tomorrow morning with frostbite developing in minutes on exposed skin. For Winnipeg and the Red River Valley, we're looking at minus 27 at this time. An extreme cold warning is in effect, and the wind chill is even going to make it feel like minus 40 and even colder. Though some sunny conditions will be felt today, but the wind chill is something that you need to take into consideration. Heading west to Brandon, Thames sitting around minus 33 at this time. Expect a sunny day. We also have that extreme cold as it continues for that region. The wind chill will feel like a minus 45 this morning. In the south central region, we're looking at similar condition. We'll see highs near. We'll see wind chills around minus 42. For the Parkland region, it's currently minus 28 in Dauphin. Extreme cold warning also continues for that region. Frostbite risk is on the high side. We will see a high of minus 24 today with a wind chill factored in. It will feel like minus 40. In the Interlake region, Gimli sitting at minus 29 at this point. Sunshine and light winds in the forecast. Temperatures will stay very cold. The high will be around minus 24, though the wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 40, so you want to take care out there. In the Power and Flame Flow, we're looking at temperatures around minus 31 in the region. Sunny day ahead. The high will only get to minus 26. The wind chill's going to make it feel like minus 37. Moving to Thompson and Churchill right now, minus 28 in Thompson. We're looking at drifting and light snow this morning. Once that system goes through, we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, and highs would reach around minus 24. Though we factor in the wind chill, it's going to make it feel like minus 36. Then further north in Churchill, it's currently minus 19. Light snow blowing at this time. Winds will be breezy from the northwest, and the high would get to only minus 17. But with the wind chill factored in, it's going to be feeling like minus 33. So we're looking at more of like sunny skies across the province with extreme cold temperatures staying for most of the day, keeping it dangerously cold. So whether you're in Winnipeg or anywhere else in the province, it's all about, just taking care of yourself.
No doubt. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
So between what Abby's saying and what Heather said in the news about the EK power outage, and then in addition, we've got some buses not running. This is all because of the cold. Extreme cold means that buses are canceled in the Franco-Manitoban School Division, so the whole division. And then Brandon School Division has canceled buses in the rural areas. And Corey's here with other traffic.
Yeah, and I haven't heard yet whether that power outages impacting any traffic lights, but if you are in the EK area, do let me know. It looks like it does run through kind of like Raleigh and McLeod, but I don't know if that actually means the traffic lights are on or not. But if you're going through there, do let me know. Things that I do know are happening out there. Northbound Pembina, just outside of the Victoria Hospital around Markham there's been a multi-vehicle collision, and that's got the center lane and median lanes blocked. Stay right to get around that. Also, the southbound median lane on Pembina also blocked because of that collision. So look out for that. As well, just a heads up from Dan on a bike who was out there. He says even on his fat bike, it's really slippery out there. He actually biffed it earlier this morning. So he's just wants to remind cars just to give cyclists extra space today because it is pretty slippery out there. But if you bundle up, you can still get around on a bike, according to Dan. So if you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you're walking, biking, driving. Love to hear from you. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on the show, you may have heard performances by the Royal Canadian Air Force Band if you've attended a Remembrance Day service, for example, in Winnipeg, the big one at the RBC Convention Centre where they often play. For the band's next performance, though, there will be no bagpipes. The RCAF Band is going to perform a special holiday show in support of United Way. The CFB Winnipeg Band is made up of about 30 full-time military musicians, and the free show is now sold out for seating, but you can still watch it on Facebook. There's a live stream happening tomorrow night, and to entice you to do so, CBC Manitoba's community reporter Shanley Vidal stopped by a rehearsal this week.
Corporal Crystal Morrison. I'm a member of the RCAF band. I play clarinet. The repertoire we're playing for the concert is really fun, lots of diversity. We have, of course, some music from some favorite holiday movies like Frozen and Home Alone. We've got some traditional carols, some jazzy carols, maybe one or two pieces that people in the audience won't know. But then, of course, it's a holiday concert. We have to have some Michael Bublé and Mariah Carey.
My name is Master Corporal Derek Stevenson. I am a member, flute player of the Royal Canadian Air Force Band, and right now we are in the RCAF band room right on 17 Wing, Winnipeg.
So the band is getting ready for that big concert, Home for the Holidays. Tell me about the preparation, like where does the preparation start?
Preparation starts basically from the previous year's concert. So last year, right afterwards, we started talking about this year's concert. So it goes back that far. So talking about which music we want to play, figuring out which location it's going to be, all that kind of stuff. So it takes a long time to put together. We are the only full-time Air Force band in the country. We're made up of about 30 full-time professional musicians. We've had a lot of new people this year. We have about 8 or 9 new members of the band this year, which is exciting. So it's their first Christmas concert. I've been here for 8 years now, so I'm kind of one of the old guys now.
You're one of the newest members of the band. Is this your first Christmas concert?
This is my first Christmas concert with the band. Actually, this is my first winter in Winnipeg. I'm from Vancouver. So the snow is very new to me. I spent 45 minutes the other day shoveling, and I've never done that in my life before. So yeah, it's been exciting being posted here and getting to play with this wonderful ensemble and at the same time experience this new city.
It's honestly one of my favorite concerts of the whole calendar for us. We do so many different types of events and perform all around the city and the world even. But to play this concert every year is really special for me. There's a lot going on at this time of year, And so it's just nice to, come to this concert and enjoy the music and relax. And we will be doing a live stream of the concert. It's going to be available on the Royal Canadian Air Force Facebook page. So the concert starts at 6:30 p.m. That's Winnipeg time on Friday, December the 13th. I think a lot of people have kind of heard of us but don't know that much about us. So hopefully they realize how good I think we are. I think we are pretty good.
We have members in the band who play multiple instruments. We have lots of people who can sing as well as play, some even rap. So the band is like really multifaceted and just a pleasure to play with. Yeah, and also the people themselves are so wonderful, so nice. And so, yeah, I feel like I've joined a really lovely family.
CBC Manitoba's community reporter Shanley Vidal at a rehearsal for CFB Winnipeg, speaking with Corporal Crystal Morrison and Master Corporal Derek Stevenson. So the Royal Canadian Air Force Band holiday concert is happening tonight and tomorrow night at Dace Hotel Concert Hall at the U of M. Tickets are free but sold out, so all the spaces that people have signed up for. But we're playing this and encouraging you to tune into their live stream because you can do that as well. You can find it online at the RCAF Facebook page, and people are encouraged to make a donation at the United Way.
A brand new car painted in a soothing shade of gray. The interior of an entire house in classic beige. Cheese aged from a bunch of black and white cows.
I'll buy that, and apparently so will you. Brilliantly Bland, Why Boring Sells, on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Well, coming up on Information Radio here on CBC After 8, according to a new study, for many mums, work-life balance isn't exactly working. So what's to blame? We're going to dig into this a little bit with hearing from one Winnipeg mom, and we'll revisit some of the stats we've been reporting on. So stay tuned for that conversation. We did have a parent actually call us to clarify something. So we just have to clarify that in the Franco-Manitoban School Division, apparently not all buses are canceled. So we understand now that École La Source in Shiloh and École Notre-Dame de Lourdes, those buses are canceled. School's on, but the buses are canceled for those two schools in that division. It is correct, however, that Brandon School Division is not running buses in any of the rural areas this morning. This is all because of extreme cold. EK, sorry, your power's still out in a big swath of that area this morning in Winnipeg in that neighborhood. We do not yet have a timeline on when specifically it's going to be back on. They said they hoped by 8, but we're not. We're still watching that. So that is going to be an annoyance this morning, and hopefully not worse than that. In Winnipeg, it's minus 27. That extreme cold warning is with us, and wind chills are going to make it feel pardon me, a little bit more like minus 41. Well, in a moment, we're going to talk about the city budget. Came down yesterday. Of course, the property tax increases, and of course, transit's going to go up if you were watching all those details. I shouldn't say of course, but if you were watching the details, you probably know this. We'll have some analysis, though, of what it will mean. Specifically, we're going to look at what was in there for transit. So stay tuned. That's coming up. Also, just want to mention that today's a very special day because the official induction into the Order of Canada is going to be happening for the recipients across this country, and 3 of them are from here in Manitoba. So congratulations to Jan English, who has fused artistic literacy and aesthetics with scientific visualization, an associate professor over at the University of Manitoba. Congratulations to Patricia Margaret Ningwants, who is preserving Anishinaabe-Moan language for future generations and a residential school survivor herself, done tons of work here in our province. And congratulations to this man, Steve Bell, who joined us last week on Make the Season Kind, who has been a longtime Christian musician, singer-songwriter, and guitarist. And in case you you missed our live show last Friday, full of music and love and hope for Harvest Manitoba and its member agencies, we actually pulled a live version of one of the tunes Steve did on the show last Friday morning. And let's hear it again this morning. This is a live performance, a cover of 1984, of Bruce Coburn's 1984 tune, Lovers in a Dangerous Time. This is Steve Bell.
Don't the hours go shorter as the days go by? You never get to stop and open your eyes. 1 minute you're waiting for the sky to fall. Next you're dazzled by the beauty of it all. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers. These fragile bodies of touch and taste. This fragrant skin, this hair like lace. Spirits open to the thrust of grace. Never a breath you can afford to waste. When you're lovers in a dangerous time.
Just giving you a taste of the live performance here at CBC last week for Make the Season Kind. That's Steve Bell's cover of Lovers in a Dangerous Time. He's one of 3 Manitobans being inducted officially into the Order of Canada today. It's 9 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for joining us on this frigid morning. Well, let's talk about a property tax increase, shall we? A lot of people across the city trying to absorb what this means. 5.95%, the largest in 34 years. That was one of the things in yesterday's budget. Also, cutting back on snow clearing on residential streets to help spending less money. So they're not going to be having the plows on residential streets until there's 15 centimeters down. Previously, it had been 10 centimeters down. Those are a few of the highlights of the first draft budget, I should say correctly, for 2025. Now, let's turn our attention, though, in some detail to transportation, because if you rely on buses, there's plans to increase Winnipeg Transit bus fares by 10 cents in the new year to $3.35 for adults. The budget also called, by the way, for the hiring of 15 new community safety officers over 2 years to help, they say, improve safety on buses. So let's talk about this with Kyle Owens, president of the Functional Transit Winnipeg Group, advocating for better service and accessibility on the bus. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
So will these two things improve accessibility and better service on the bus?
Well, the big changes this summer. The frequent service network is rolling out as part of the Winnipeg Transit Master Plan, June 2025. It is the biggest change to Winnipeg Transit service in memory, in the entire history of the service. It is coming. It's going to be a huge change that brings frequent service to so many more routes. It's a ground floor rewrite, but it's not here yet. This is another tick upward in the fare to use Winnipeg Transit. Riders are used to seeing those numbers tick up. Little by little, that number goes up again and again. It is amazing to think that a 10-cent change can affect so many people. So many people who use transit are really feeling squeezed, and it affects them. That small change has so much of impact on people who are really feeling squeezed.
So the 10 cents, the increase in the fares, you said it'll have an impact, a negative impact on people who are already feeling squeezed. Was it expected?
Well, certainly anyone who's paid for anything recently knows that costs are going up across the board for goods and services everywhere. It is kind of an awkward increase going from $3.25 to $3.35. Nobody really carries dimes anymore, or at least I don't. I think you're effectively going to see the cost go up quite a bit more. It's going to be, people carry quarters and loonies. It's much more likely to be $3.50, $4 is going to effectively be what people are paying, because that's the change that they have on them. The other issue is that you're going to find people who just don't have that extra quarter, and the driver is going to have to make a call on whether or not to accept that fare. And that isn't great, because the single greatest source of disputes and confrontations on buses are fare disputes. It puts those drivers in an awkward position.
I want to ask you about the community safety officers to ride the bus. So there is more money in this budget for that. I mentioned 15 officers. Some critics say, though, yet that the work is not yet proven, though, that this is actually helping with safety on buses. Haven't had enough time to sort of analyze it and have data to support that it works. What do you think of spending more money on those positions before we quantifiably know that they're helping?
That is a complicated issue. Certainly, Winnipeg Transit is a foundational service in terms of city services. So many people, tens of thousands of people, are out there right now on a bus using those services and have a completely positive, normal, uneventful experience. We don't talk about the fact that for 99% of people who use transit, that is a non-event. When there are disruptions, when there are concerns about people feeling safe or security, then that is news, and that is worth talking about. And certainly the community safety officers seem to be an attempt to address people's concerns. It is, I agree, early days. Security is very complicated. Feelings of safety can be assuaged, can be helped by having the sense that there are more people out there helping manage situations, but security can also be zero-sum. There are some people who can feel that the additional presence of security can make them feel less safe. And it's important to talk about how to address their concerns as well. And I think that we have seen the community safety officers use that language of approaching people carefully and with consideration, of learning how to de-escalate. That is crucial. But these are still, as you said, early days of the program.
What transit issues would you have liked to have seen addressed in this budget that you didn't see?
Well, the thing that I want to see is that primary transit network roll out right away. That is a crucial change that we have been waiting for the last couple of years, ever since the Transit Master Plan was passed almost unanimously by City Council a couple of years ago. We want to get those buses more efficiently running on those routes.
So that can't happen fast enough. I just want to return to the budget.
That can't happen fast enough, but this summer it is coming.
So I just want to return to some specifics then. How will the transit increase itself? You were talking about it affecting people, but how will it affect people who pay for monthly passes?
Well, those costs will go up. That will be less disruptive because it is just something that they pay for at point of sale. But for people who are out listening to this, who are really feeling squeezed, thinking, this really adds up, this is really going to be hard, make sure that you know about the Win Pass program. That is a 50% fare reduction program for low-income households or for new arrivals or permanent residents who have been here less than a year. Make sure that you call 311, reach out to the city, find out about applying for that program, because that is available for Winnipeg households.
The city's saying it plans to spend most of the revenue raised from the property tax hike that we were mentioning to cover transit revenue shortfalls. What do you think about that in terms of, whether or not there could be an alternative way to create more revenue for transit, or if, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's not clear to me. I'd like to find out more about where that revenue shortfall is coming from. We've seen transit use return effectively to normal since COVID in the last couple of years. So it's not quite clear to me either where that revenue shortfall is coming from, because those buses are on the roads and people are using them once again. People are going back to work. And so there's a lot of that usage is back to normal. So that's not clear to me either.
We'll leave it there, Kyle. Thank you very much for some analysis of what we saw in the budget yesterday. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Kyle Owens, who's the president of Functional Transit Winnipeg. If you want to react to the budget or if you want to read more about it, go to our website. And our listener line to weigh in anytime is 788-3205. Well, man, it's cold if you're waiting for a bus this morning. Some of them aren't even running. In the Brandon School Division, they're not running in rural areas. And then at two specific schools in the Franco-Manitoban Division, Nicola, Sources, Shiloh, and Ecole Notre Dame de Lourdes, no bus service as well. All right, Heather Wells is here now with our news update. Good morning.
Good morning. A Manitoba woman who waited years for knee surgery is now dealing with news she will likely lose her leg. Roseanne Milburn got an infection after a procedure was started in October. The surgeon removed dead tissue from her knee, but then wasn't able to finish that procedure. We're going to hear what happened. And First Nation leaders are calling for an immediate resolution to the ongoing Canada Post strike. The Crown Corporation is the only courier that flies in parcels to a number of isolated communities in Manitoba's north. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So we want to mention northbound Pembina in front of the Victoria Hospital. You may see a problem there. There was a multi-vehicle incident. We're not clear if that's clear going or not. We had multiple lanes affected, but 788-3093 to update us, please do. Extreme cold warning continues. -27 feels like -41, and still ahead on the program, some more analysis of work-life balance. If you're a working mom and you said that you don't have it, we'll look at a new study that says, yep.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Snotty-nosed res kids think that thinking of Indigenous people existing in the future at all is a radical act. That's the idea behind their new record, Red Future. They'll be here to introduce you to the album and tell you why it's important, even when you're making a political record, to be silly. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel-Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
After over a decade of war, people in Syria are rebuilding their lives under a new government. We'll speak with people there, from a former political prisoner to someone who rescued people during the war, about what everyday life looks like in Syria now. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is preparing to take action on the border, and now that he has briefed the country's premiers on his plans, their talking points are getting a little tougher. Team Canada had a virtual meeting about Donald Trump's tariff threat last night, and Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with details. Janice, we've heard a lot of words from our political leaders. When does the action happen?
Marcia, we were already expecting Monday's fall economic statement to include a $1 billion border package. The heads of the RCMP and the Border Services Agency are in front of a parliamentary committee this afternoon. So we'll see if they've got specifics about what that kind of money buys in terms of surveillance gear, infrastructure, or additional officers. But beyond this budget boost, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc also says there's a bill coming.
There is a moment where we can make increased investments in both the RCMP and CBSA. Some of it may require legislative authorities, but there are a number of exciting moments coming up in the next few days.
Conservatives have offered to help pass a border package, but would it include more than just new spending? Could it expand the jurisdiction of border officers so they can patrol the entire length of the border, not just the designated crossings, for example? Premiers have also asked Health Canada, as the drug regulator, to be more involved in the tracing and crackdown on precursor chemicals for fentanyl. Quebec Premier François Legault also wants tighter visa rules. And Immigration Minister Mark Miller said yesterday his department needs to improve the integrity of its visa controls. He's also hinted at changes to the Safe Third Country Agreement. Will all this be enough for the Americans? Because, yes, the incoming Trump administration is using this tariff threat to get what it wants on border security, but it also wants the revenue it believes it can make off these big new tariffs.
So what else can Canada do to deter tariffs?
Ontario Premier Doug Ford suggested that Canada needs to be pushing on more economic pain points, leveraging its natural resources, even perhaps threatening the Americans' energy security.
But we'll use every tool in our toolbox, including cutting them off energy that we're sending down there.
Now, look, as with all retaliatory moves, there's a real risk of mutual self-harm if you're going to start talking about throttling the heavily integrated cross-border electricity grid, for example. For now, Chrystia Freeland is encouraging premiers not to focus on sector-specific threats or exemptions. Keep trying to exempt Canada as a whole, full stop, from these tariffs.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. You might say the mood in St. John's today is electric. A contentious power deal between Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec may soon be overhauled. As Terry Roberts tells us, we will get more details from both premiers this afternoon.
Quebec needs to show us the money.
Premier Andrew Furey's been spouting that line for months when asked about ongoing talks with Quebec to rewrite the lopsided Churchill Falls hydroelectric contract, an agreement that's been described as one of the worst energy deals in Canadian history.
About 90% of it will go to Quebec.
Then Premier Joey Smallwood in 1969 promoting the deal. This afternoon, Furey and Quebec Premier François Legault will announce what's being described as a historic partnership, an agreement in principle that will see Quebec continue to have access to massive quantities of Labrador electricity, but also funnel more money to Newfoundland and Labrador.
We have plays and operas written about this.
The current deal is a lingering wound in Newfoundland and Labrador, says political scientist Amanda Bittner. Multiple legal challenges against the contract have failed, and Quebec has refused to budge. Hydro-Quebec buys the power for 0.02 cents per kilowatt hour and sells it for as much as 40 times that amount on the market. It's a legacy of a 1969 deal that soured relations and caused a level of resentment that seeped into the cultural psyche of Newfoundland and Labrador, says Bittner.
So to have a really boring energy deal take up that much of our cultural sort of mindset and thinking and creativity is really interesting.
Legault admitted last year the original Churchill Falls agreement is a bad deal. How far is he willing to go to remedy that injustice? We'll find out this afternoon. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
The White House is calling it the largest single-day grant of clemency in modern history. U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to pardon 39 people today. All were convicted of nonviolent crimes. Biden is also expected to commute the sentences of nearly 1,500 others. Those are people who were released from prison and put on home confinement at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden is still being criticized by some for pardoning his son Hunter, despite saying he wouldn't do that.
윤석열 대통령에 대한 2차
South Korea's opposition parties have filed a second impeachment motion against Yoon Suk-yeol. This is the latest backlash against the president for declaring martial law last week. Yoon survived a first impeachment vote last weekend. His party boycotted that vote, but there are indications some members will support this one. But Yoon says he will fight to the end.
지금껏 국정 마비와
In a televised address this morning, Yoon defended his decision to declare martial law. He described it as a legitimate part of governing. It's the time of year when cases of RSV start rising among young children. What makes this year different is a new shot to protect infants against the respiratory illness. But as health reporter Mike Crawley tells us, 8 of the 10 provinces are not offering it to all newborns.
So you start by getting baby undressed for us, okay, please?
At this Toronto hospital, a nurse gets ready to immunize 4-month-old Neela against respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV.
I'm so sorry.
RSV typically causes cold-like symptoms, but can lead to serious lung infections, especially in infants. It sends several thousand Canadian children to hospital each year.
Babies born preterm are particularly susceptible.
Dr. Philip Sherbo is Chief of Pediatrics for Mackenzie Health, a hospital system in the Greater Toronto Area.
Those with more severe disease may have things like wheezing, some difficulty breathing. They may look distressed or incredibly tired.
Now there's a new shot against RSV. It's a monoclonal antibody, a specialized injection that provides immediate protection from disease. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization recently recommended it for all infants. However, only Ontario, Quebec, and the 3 territories are offering it universally. Elsewhere, only the highest-risk babies are eligible.
I really wish we could have it in our province.
Hannah Markham is mother of a 4-month-old in Halifax.
This is just to protect our babies, keep them safe, keep them healthy.
The other 8 provinces did not reach a pricing agreement with Sanofi, the company that makes the RSV shot. Its list price is more than $950 per dose. In a statement, Sanofi says it continues to work with all provinces and territories to facilitate access to the shot for all Canadian babies. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The Smalls Claim Court of Yukon has ordered Air Canada to pay $10,000 to a couple whose vacation was ruined. They'd saved for 3 years for their first getaway without kids, but when they got to the airport in February 2023, their flight was overbooked. Over 3 days, they were sent to multiple Canadian airports. Each time they were promised a replacement flight, it never materialized. The justice hearing their case said Air Canada put the couple through a horrendous experience. Vancouver is now officially a Bitcoin-friendly city. City Council voted last night in favor of a motion by Mayor Ken Sim. As the CBC's Yvette Bren tells us, it came after some fierce debate.
And this motion allows us to explore whether Bitcoin can help us safeguard our financial resources.
A parade of colorful crypto advocates applaud Mayor Ken Sim's motion to explore integrating Bitcoin into the city's financial strategies.
Because the loonie is no longer competitive.
Some rapped.
They tried to shut down me and XRP, but it was all just fiat before me.
Some preached.
Bitcoin absolutely represents an opportunity to rescue humanity.
They touted Bitcoin as a way to solve everything from inflation to housing affordability. But critics warn it's not technically legal tender. Even in U.S. cities that allow it for tax payments like Detroit, it's converted to cash fast. Vancouver City Councillor Pete Fry voted no to Mayor Ken Sim's motion, noting money laundering problems in places that embrace it, like El Salvador and Switzerland.
Zug is known for tax evasion, Russian oligarchs. It's also the most expensive city to live in Switzerland.
Sim's motion to explore Bitcoin passed, and he assured council of its potential to solve even environmental issues.
Bitcoin has the opportunity to actually have so many positive impacts on the environment.
Despite dire warnings just days ago from top economists, including the former U.S. Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, who called talk of a U.S. government Bitcoin reserve crazy. Yvette Brent, CBC News, Vancouver.
And you can find a little more on this story on the BC page at cbcnews.ca. Click local. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. It is extreme cold. Yep, even colder than yesterday, folks. You likely know this if you're up and trying to be out and about. I suspect you would have had to have your car plugged in last night. We'll update what is not moving today. We do have some bus cancellations affecting some of the divisions, school divisions here in Manitoba this morning. And we're going to talk a little bit more about a hydro outage that we've been paying attention to as well out in East Kildonan. In addition, this hour on the program, work-life balance. You ever heard of it? Well, if you're a working mom and you said no, you're not alone. According to a new study, many say they're struggling to find that balance. So what's to blame? We're going to hear from some Winnipeg moms about what they have to say. That's coming up in this last half hour of the show. Stay with us. Let's go to Heather Wells now, though, for headlines. Hello.
Hello. Well, the city budget calls for 36 new police officers. Kate Kaler at the Social Planning Council believes that money would be better spent by community-based groups. She says poverty reduction is the key to making Winnipeg a safer city. A woman who may lose her leg after surgical complications wants someone in Manitoba's healthcare system to take responsibility. Roseanne Milburn got an infection after a procedure in October. She ended up waiting 8 days with an open wound before a bed opened for her at the Health Sciences Centre, and now she is learning the delay means her leg may not be able to be saved. We'll hear her story in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
8:11 is the time right now. So before we turn to the cold weather, let's mention these bus cancellations here. So due to extreme cold, buses are canceled in the Franco-Manitoban School Division in 2 schools. So that is Notre Dame de Lourdes and also the school in Shiloh. Both schools are open, but no buses. Brandon School Division, no buses in the rural areas. And yeah, this is the morning, Abby, where hopefully you started your car or plugged it in because you're going to have issues.
Is it okay if I say I can see the cold? You know, I'm looking at the top of the buildings and I can just see and feel that cold outside. That's what it feels like
It's
this
that
morning.
Stillness.
Yeah, It's frozen.
Almost like frozen fog.
Yeah, another cold morning. Temperatures bitterly and dangerously cold across the regions this morning. We're looking at that extreme cold warning in effect for most of the regions. The wind chill is something that will be in play today. We're looking at it feeling like minus 40 and even colder. Now, those temperatures will be staying with us for most of the day into tomorrow morning, with frostbite developing in minutes and exposed skin. So you need to take care out there. Winnipeg right now, minus 26 with a wind chill. It even feels colder. We will see some sunny skies today. The high will get to minus 25, but the wind chill for Winnipeg is going to make it feel like minus 41 this morning. We see some clear skies tonight. Temperatures will drop to around minus 33, though the wind chill is still going to stay in that range of the minus 40s. And then tomorrow, some sunny conditions. Similar conditions in the south. The north is seeing light snow and drifting snow, and also some blowing snow here and there with wind chills in the range of minus 30s. I'll just add this, Mercy. If it's too cold for you to be outside, think of the pets. If you're walking your pets this morning, please be considerate. If you have to wrap them up or give them those cute little shoes, please, you have to do that.
Yeah, I know. Because their paw pads are like naked skin, right?
Exactly. So you need to put them into consideration also. And also the farm animals, checking on them.
Let's also mention a comment here. This is a fun one, you guys. So remember yesterday we were asking about your toque and the story behind your toques?
Mm-hmm.
So we got this lovely picture of Squirrely Q, who calls herself Squirrely Q on Facebook, smiling away with this beautiful green cable knit toque, and then it's got an embroidered symbol on the front, which is just really beautiful, and it's a Métis embroidery. And so she wrote in, this is Leah Dorian toque, so a Métis artist from Saskatchewan. My kids got it for me a few years ago because sometimes I'm a walking billboard for Métis art, she writes. I only wear it when, I have bad hair, so there's flatness that won't make it any worse, so I already have bad hair, she said. Or I wear it when it's minus 9,000 and flat hair be darned, but the hood's not enough. So that would be yesterday and this morning. Abby's got a hat on his head again. You've had quite a collection on this year.
Yeah, I know it's going to be cold, so I'm like, this is that minus 9,000 Squirrely talked about.
Yeah. Abby's got the one with the fur that flips up and then the flaps over the ears. So yeah, if you want to show us your toque, post it on Facebook. We'll all band together. My hair is just staticky. I look like one of those electricity balls this morning. Every time I keep smoothing it down. All right, let's get to serious things here. Corey's been waiting to tell us about traffic. There's been issues around Victoria Hospital, right?
That's right. So northbound Pembina, right around Victoria Hospital there, the center lane and median lane have been blocked throughout the morning because of a multi-vehicle collision there. Actually, just heard from Adrian on the commuter line. He says it's really backed up there, northbound Pembina, right in that area. There is a fire truck on scene now, he says, but keep right. That right lane is still open. But also southbound, the median lane there is also closed in that same area as well, blocked in that area as well. So might see some southbound delays building up there too. That is really the only major issue that I've heard of this morning. But if you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
A lot of things going on in that clip. Does it sound like your life? Do you sometimes wish you could make it all stop? People lead such busy lives, from work to friends and family. It's hard to strike a balance, but according to a new Gallup survey, it's especially hard for working mums. The poll found that compared to men, women are nearly twice as likely to want to quit their jobs because of childcare issues. And on top of that, more women than men say that their jobs affect their mental health. And while the surveyors only spoke to Americans, many Winnipeg moms like Haley Simons see themselves in these stats. Here's what she had to say while speaking with CBC's Chidi Akuma.
I think that the perception is that, if you're doing it all, you're a super mom who doesn't need any help. When, you on the outside it looks like you're a super mom, but on the inside you're just trying to keep it all together. And so instead of, somebody saying, oh, she's doing a lot, I bet she needs some help, like let's give her a break. They're saying, oh, you're doing a great job. You're killing it. Let's just, give you a pat on the back and then we'll move on. There's, I think, just a lack of overall community. And I think that people just tend to keep to themselves a lot, even though we need to be social, we need to be out and about, we need to be making connections. And unfortunately, if a mom does not have that support network in place, if they don't have family, if they don't have friends, it can be really, really hard to find that community outside of that. The expectation is so high.
So that's Winnipeg mother Haley Simons. She was in conversation with CBC's Chidi Akuma about this. Well, my next guest is also a mom. Danielle Famakin has a 6-year-old daughter. She's also a therapist. She says this is a topic that she often talks about with her friends, how to find that work-life balance. And she joins us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. It is so exciting to be speaking with you today. I listen every morning. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, that's really nice. You know what I'm noticing about us speaking today? You're so busy, you're in your car.
Yes, even arranging to be here today had several steps involved, and we had a little bit of a laugh about that. And it's perfect on topic for the discussion today. I thought I just had to weigh in. I had to give my 2 cents about this very topic.
So what were you thinking about as you were listening to, that clip, Haley there describing sort of the fact that in her view, the loss of community, that whole village to raise a child thing is part of what is at play here?
Absolutely. And the conversations I've been having, a lot of conversations, exactly that. People having challenges, balancing work, family, personal well-being, everything in between. And those pressures are influencing those decisions about family size. And I think it's important to talk about and normalize why so many are feeling stretched thin right now.
What are the other factors when you're having these conversations and for yourself about why people are feeling so stretched thin?
I think when I think about the conversations I've had, colleagues, coworkers, friends, my sisters, my family members, it's that double shift and that invisible mental load. So double shift is essentially that balance of those multiple roles. So many people were managing full-time work. I just finished my master's. We have household duties. We have pets, caregiving responsibilities, personal commitments, and that constant juggling can feel like holding down 2 full-time jobs. And on top of that invisible mental load, so beyond the physical tasks, there's that mental effort, the planning, organizing, anticipation of the family needs, schedules. That mental load, I think, can be sometimes just as exhausting as that visible work.
Do you hide the stress? There was also this thing in what Haley was saying there about this sort of feeling that somehow, you're not asking, you might need help. No one's offering help. Like it's kind of a complicated mix of things because you want to be able to do it all. And yet, so how do you manage that mentally?
Absolutely. So a big focus for myself is normalizing those conversations and kind of challenging that expectation and also looking to redefine family in a way. So breaking that do it all myth. So that expectation to manage everything perfectly all the time can be sometimes unrealistic and harmful to our well-being. And it's okay to set boundaries and define what that balance looks like for yourself. And also, all family structures are valid. So whether people choose to have no children, 1 child, a large family, I believe every decision is valid. And there is a lot of societal pressure on if you don't, why don't you? If you have 1, why not 2? And being able to kind of redefine family, which comes in many forms, and just validating each choice, which reflects our own personal needs and capacities, especially given what we're going through right now, like millennial parenting, economic considerations. It's not the easiest right now for families, and just validating those experiences for folks.
There's a lot of judgment and societal pressure, especially on social media, around sort of what you mentioned an important word there, what our individual capacities might be.
Absolutely.
How do you feel that as a parent?
I think I had a very romanticized idea of before kids, before I had my daughter, of how I could do it all and work 2 jobs and go to university, and I finished my master's and I did all those things, but at what cost to my own well-being at a point. And so having to kind of reevaluate that for myself, and like Haley had mentioned, that lack of support, because a lot of millennial parents, the generation above, are still employed, they're still working. So to be able to have that family support looks a little different, I think, in this day and age. And so creating our own networks of support, whatever that looks like for you, is so important. If that's connecting with community groups, mom groups, it can be really hard to add in that self-care piece and being realistic about that. But if anything at all, also a strategy I've used is kind of looking to tech in a different way. So using these family apps and delegating some of the responsibilities, or trying to stay connected, which I think sometimes people don't think about as a resource to some of those pressures. But absolutely, if anything at all, if for listeners today, you are not alone, and normalizing some of this for all of us, I think, can be really healthy.
In this Gallup poll, I just want to look at the data. It also found that working mothers are nearly twice as likely to say they've considered leaving their jobs because of childcare issues compared to working fathers. What are your thoughts on that?
I see those bigger societal and policy things at play there. So when, for me specifically, I'm lucky enough to have some pretty nice parental leaves and maternity leaves, etc., some flexibility in my workplace policies, such as a work from home, etc. But that is such a privilege that not everybody has. And I think the larger conversation is seeing if we could get maybe some more influence in having reliable, accessible childcare. And there's some major barriers for folks in making it difficult to balance that work and family responsibility. I could absolutely see why that is a need for a lot of families, and having to make that choice. Absolutely.
I want to lean into something that you've been mentioning here, Danielle, because you were talking about sort of how things have changed, and you've been identifying yourself generationally as, I guess, an elder millennial, right? So you're part of this, new generation of mothers at this age, and the generation above you is like a smaller generation. There's all the moms with families, even with kids, right? How do you think your generation is doing things differently? Like, I just want to get you to elaborate on a few more of those really generationally specific challenges.
I hate to speak for an entire generation, but for myself, a lot of pressure here, but for myself personally, and this could be different for cultural reasons, etc., but I think the emphasis on a very nuclear family is something that we're seeing, that you should be able to be independent and very individualistic in being able to meet the needs of yourself and your family. And so kind of lacking that support, because my friends, as much as we'd love to be there to help each other and family, etc., we are all working, we are all having something, we all have childcare responsibilities, etc., in my immediate circle. So you have to get creative, absolutely. And I just think that influence on the nuclear and just kind of more individualistic views of support and care, if we could shift that and be a little bit vulnerable, kind of not romanticize so much. And it's okay, and we love our children, and we love our work, and we're passionate, and all those things. And also, it is hard, and just kind of normalizing that.
Are there enough discussions, within the family units, do you think? Like, I'm wondering whether or not there's this idea of the default parent. So I'm suspecting when you go in, you think, just like you said, you might think you might be able to balance it all as an individual. You might also, if you are in a couple situation in your family, if that's your family unit, that you might think, we'll be 50-50. And it really rarely works that way if you look and talk to families and statistically look at, some person always. But are there enough discussions about who the default parent will be, or how do you think that could be handled? What does that look like in your life?
I love that topic specifically. When I had started hearing about that phrase, default parenting, ooh, what's that? Wow, absolutely, that makes sense. And that's essentially just one parent taking on that invisible load for the other. And it's very kind of covert, because you just get into a flow. And it's once you realize, oh, yeah, that's what that is, and be able to name it, having those further conversations, I think, can really help people to look at what those next strategies might be. So now that we've named it, what can we kind of do to address that? And for me, it was delegating more and getting into that kind of tech space. So if it's sending reminders, having a family calendar, that was really helpful in that way to kind of get out of and underneath of being that default parent. And I'm very lucky. I have a great partner. And so that really worked for us in order to do that. But families are so complex and unique, and what works for one might not work for all. But yes, default parenting and also themes of weaponized incompetence gets in there as well, right? So there's a real complex dance of sorts in families that I think it's wonderful to be able to just talk about and normalize.
What does that mean, just before you go, the themes of weaponized incompetence, I think you said?
Yes. So I follow a creator on TikTok, and she's wonderful at kind of using comedy in a way to reflect some of our experiences as parents. So I think when one is the default, sometimes we get into this habit of a little bit of weaponized incompetence, which is I don't know how to do that, although we've lived in the same household for many years, right? Or, but you just do it so much better. And, and kind of tongue in cheek, the way the creator brings a little humor to it. And just being able to name those things. And when we look at roles, and sometimes if it's more traditionally divided, there's a lot of overarching themes that come to those balances of family responsibility. And I in listening yesterday, the connection between women having higher levels of education and more involvement in workforce and those sorts of things, I can see absolutely why there's been a shift. But what can we do now that we're here to mitigate some of that?
Danielle, come back anytime. Great conversation, really valuable for parents listening and for specifically to topic for moms listening. Appreciate you today.
Thank you so much.
You take care. That's Danielle Famick, and that is she's a mom and also a therapist, and with us today to talk about work-life balance and lack thereof, or how to handle it in 2024. If you want to weigh in, if you're listening and something in your mind made you go, oh, I'm going to share this idea of how I handled this in my family or what I face, 788-3205. As she said, every family is so unique and different with all of this. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Just a reminder that The Current is coming up right after our show here this morning, and by now you know what's happening with the school division buses. Rurally in Brandon not running, as well as 2 schools in Franco, Manitoba not running, the school in Shiloh and Notre Dame de Lourdes. NK, North Kildonan, we're hopefully going to get a bit of an update here on what's happening with the electrical shortage there. And we have had problems, of course, outside in traffic of the Victoria Hospital on Pembina, northbound Pembina, in a few of the lanes there. So Corey's been updating that throughout the morning. So you've likely by now been avoiding the area, which is good due to an earlier incident. But 788-3093 if you do have any updates for Corey on our traffic line. So a reminder of our local programming once we're off air here. Of course, I mentioned The Current coming up right after our show, which is a national show. But next programming for Manitoba is from noon to 1 with their call-in as well on the noon show between 12:30 and 1 specifically. And then from 3 to 6, Up to Speed with Faith Fundal. Right now, though, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's minus 26 in downtown Winnipeg. Out at the airport, it's minus 31, where the wind makes it feel more like minus 43. Is the novelty wearing off? You need to wear all the layers on this second day of extreme and dangerous cold for most of Manitoba. Cold Arctic air is covering much of southern Manitoba and parts of the north. Wind chills of minus 40 to minus 45 mean frostbite. If you have to be outside today, you are advised cover up and keep moving in order to maintain your body heat. Also, seek shelter from the wind. A woman who may lose her leg after surgical complications wants someone in Manitoba's healthcare system to take responsibility. Roseanne Milburn got an infection after a procedure in October. She ended up waiting 8 days with an open wound before a bed opened up for her at the Health Sciences Centre. Because of the delay, she was told her leg could not be saved. A spokesperson for Shared Health has apologized for Milburn's ordeal. They also say she has information to guide her health care going forward. She calls that a slap in the face.
Because they don't know the pain and suffering I've been going through. And I don't have options because the option they're giving me is live with an infection in my leg for the rest of my life.
Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera has offered Millburn their sympathies. The city budget calls for 36 new police officers. It is less than what Winnipeg Police had asked for, but Acting Chief Art Stannard says it's still great news. Kate Kaler at the Social Planning Council believes the money would be better spent by community-based groups. She says poverty reduction is the key to making the city safer. Kaler also questions the City of Winnipeg's plan to hire 15 more community safety officers to ride transit buses.
As far as I'm aware, there has been no evaluation of that program. It's not even a year old. I know any number of community-based organizations. I was one of them. They were consulted on that program. We've not seen that report yet, but they're still going to get an expansion. And my question is based on what evidence?
Kaler says not-for-profit groups must prove they've accomplished their goals before getting more funding. The city will not continue to fund space for homeless people in the Millennium Library. That Community Connections program isn't included in the new draft budget. Finance Chair Jeff Brawadi says the funding was already scheduled to end this year.
We've continued to see some challenges at the Downtown Millennium Library, most recently with somebody appearing with an edged weapon, not getting into the library branch. The community connection space is on the outside of that secure area, which in my mind is a safety concern for our employees and for the public.
Brawadi says the city will continue to pay for community safety hosts in the library, as well as 3 social workers who help people inside the library. A budget proposal to reduce the frequency of snow plowing residential streets is getting an icy reception from some Winnipeggers. Justin Dela Cruz says he was disappointed to learn about the pilot project in the proposed budget. Dela Cruz says it'll be bad news for drivers if the city waits until there's 15 centimeters of snow before clearing residential streets.
Our population is growing, more cars are being bought, and our residentials are getting full with vehicles. So, yeah, it's just very inconvenient.
Starting next winter, the pilot project would see how much money could be saved by waiting to start plowing until 15 centimeters of snow has fallen. The current threshold to plow residential streets is 10 centimeters. First Nation leaders are calling for an immediate resolution to the ongoing Canada Post strike. The Crown Corporation is the only courier that flies in parcels to a number of isolated communities in Manitoba's north. But this strike, now into its 4th week, means the delivery of critical supplies has also been halted for weeks. Walter Westesikut is Grand Chief of Keewatin Tribal Council.
When there's no mail moving, then prescriptions are not being filled. They are not receiving any payments that they're expecting to receive, and they're not able to make payments on their bills. So it's quite a huge impact for people that are living in isolated communities.
Canada Post and its workers' union remain far apart on key issues. You can find more Manitoba news and all the budget details on our website. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather Wells.
Welcome.
Big thanks to Heather Wells, to Alana Cole, as well as to Megan Ketcherson for the morning. With a last look at what's happening on the commute, here's Corey.
Northbound Pembina, just outside of the Victoria Hospital all morning, the center lane and median lane have been blocked by a multi-vehicle collision, so stay right to get around that. Heard about some big backups from some folks as well. That southbound median lane also blocked on Pembina there, so look out for that.
All right, thanks, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi.
It's extremely cold across the province today. Winnipeg is experiencing wind chills in the range of -40s, and even it's going to get colder than that. A risk of frostbite is a big concern this morning. We're ending the day -31 at the airport, -26 at the Fox. So it's going to be sunny, but it's still going to be bitterly cold.
All right, thank you, Abby Adeyemi.
Thank you.
Big thanks also to Kevin Ipatebo, who is our YouTube producer for our live show in the morning. And the contributors today, our associate producers who worked on all of our interviews today, Chidi Akumo, Kalkadan Mulugeta, as well as Carmen Ponto. Thank you guys for all of your work. And thank you for listening to Information Radio this cold Thursday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well, Manitoba. The Current is coming up next. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on 89.3 FM.